Chapter 3663. After killing Gong Ji Lu, Wen burned the corpses of Gong Ji Lu and Nic on the deck of the ship, taking their spirit rings for himself. Gong Ji Lu and Nic's ship in particular. The ship wasn't a flying divine artifact, but it could freely travel through the cosmos, much to Zhuo Wen's delight. Furthermore, Zhuo Wen realized that the divine ship was much faster than his golden coffin. Clearly, it wasn't an ordinary item. After putting away the divine ship, Zhuo Wen returned to the starry sky and headed towards the valley where the Long family was located in the Xianmi heavenly domain. He'd already contacted his clone and knew that the situation in the valley had taken a turn for the worse. His clone had been severely injured in his most recent battle with the Golden Corner Divine Lord. He was now in a semi-unconscious state and had almost no combat ability left. The valley where the Ryuka resided was filled with gloom and gloom. Many of the elites gathered here were wounded and their faces were filled with despair. Didn't Lord Zhuowen say that his master would return soon? It's been so many years, why hasn't there been any news at all? The Golden Corner Divine Lord's army is already here. Do we still have any hope? I think that the Master Lord Zhuo spoke of is a lie. Even if he does have a master like that, there's no way he'd stay in the lower realms forever. He would have gone to a higher realm long ago. Many cultivators in the valley discussed this in hushed tones. They were all waiting in despair for the Master Zhuowen spoke of. But so many years had passed, and the so-called strongest person beneath the cosmos still hadn't appeared. A large portion of the cultivators in the valley had already begun to question Zhuowen. Add to that the fact that the Golden Corner Divine Lord's army was closing in on them, and the cultivators' minds began to waver. In the end, it was Taoist Three Purities who urged them to surrender. Three Purities led a group of elites from the Three Purities Street and the Wilderness Street to the main palace of the Ryuka. However, the doors to the main palace were tightly shut. The Black King followed behind the Three Pure Ones with a complicated look in his eyes. He wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he let out a long sigh and said nothing. He understood the Three Pure Ones' thoughts and knew that they were ambitious. However, he couldn't bear it. After all, Ryuka had accepted them and allowed them to take refuge in this valley. It was precisely because of the powerful restrictive formations in the valley that they were able to block the terrifying attacks of the Golden Cosmos army at the last moment, allowing them to catch their breaths. But now, they had come together to ask the Ryuka leaders to open the array formation and surrender to the golden starry sky. This was like biting the hand that fed them. This was especially true for the three ancestors of the desolate street. They were frowning and their faces were filled with reluctance. Jun had done them a favor, and he had never killed them because of their hostility. They actually knew how to be grateful. However, the Three Pure Ones were currently the strongest cultivators apart from Zhuowen. They knew very well that if they did not follow the Three Pure Ones, they would definitely end up in a miserable state. Three Pure Ones, what's the matter with you? My master is still recuperating in the main palace. What are you trying to do by bringing so many people here? The green-haired corpse opened the door and walked out slowly. He looked unkindly at the Three Pure Ones who were leading the group in the courtyard in front of the main palace. The Three Pure Ones smiled and didn't care about the green-haired corpse's attitude. He said calmly, "I'm not trying to do anything. I just want to ask Master Zhuo how long it will take for his master to come here and help us out." The restrictive formations in the valley are powerful, but after such a long period of attacks by the Golden Cosmos army, it has reached its limit. In less than a month, the formations in the valley will completely collapse. When that happens, we will all die at the hands of the Golden Cosmos army. The green-haired corpse waved his hand impatiently. Just wait patiently. My master's master will be here soon. Once he's here, the Golden Cosmos Divine Lord will be nothing. Now, go back to where you came from. The Three Pure Ones stood in place and had no intention of leaving. He grinned and said, "Soon? I don't think so. Hurry up and get Zhuowen to come out. I need him to give us an explanation." The green-haired corpse's face was gloomy. He looked coldly at the Three Pure Ones and said, "Three Pure Ones, are you rebelling? How dare you call my master by his name?" The green-haired corpse was filled with worry. After the third battle with the Golden Cosmos Divine Lord, Yuan had been severely injured and was still in a coma. It was because of Zhuowen's poor condition that the three pure ones became more and more arrogant. They even formed a clique in the valley and kept cultivating their own subordinates. Almost all the cultivators who temporarily took refuge in the valley were roped in by the three pure ones. Now that the three pure ones came to ask for an explanation from Zhuowen, they probably guessed that Zhuowen's injuries weren't light. They were here to test Zhuowen. Once the three pure ones knew that Zhuowen was seriously injured and unconscious, the green-haired corpse knew that the three pure ones would definitely attack Zhuowen and eliminate him. The old man wouldn't let him go either. He would definitely refine him alive to increase his strength. Rebel? Ha! You think we're Zhuowen's dogs like you? The three pure ones sneered and continued, "Get out of the way and get Tuan to come out. He must give us an explanation. If he doesn't come out, then don't blame us for attacking the Ryuka. If we surrender all the Ryuka to the Golden Cosmos Divine Lord, then we'll be considered to have made some contributions. If we surrender to the Golden Cosmos Divine Lord, we can keep our lives and even get an official position." The green-haired corpse's face changed. He said angrily, "How dare you? The Ryuka kindly took you in and gave you shelter. How dare you attack the Ryuka?" Three pure ones smiled. He took a step forward with his right foot and turned into a shadow in the air. He flashed past and arrived in front of the green-haired mummy in an instant. The green-haired mummy's pupils shrank to the size of needles. Before it could react, the horsetail whisk in three pure ones' hands turned into white snakes and coiled around its entire body in an instant. So fast. The green-haired corpse wanted to struggle, but it was futile. It was only at the early stage of the fifth blight, while the three pure ones were already at the peak of the fifth blight. The three pure ones had also cultivated the purple extreme spirit art. His strength had already broken through the shackles and was much stronger than before. He was very close to breaking through the heavens. The difference between the green-haired corpse and the three pure ones wasn't small. A mere early-stage fifth blight ant dares to be impudent in front of me. Do you believe that I won't destroy you? The three pure ones said calmly. The green-haired corpse exploded with terrifying green flames. Unfortunately, the white hairs on the horsetail whisk in the three pure ones' hands were like a white sea. The green flames were extinguished as soon as they appeared. The green-haired corpse's eyes widened and he screamed, but he didn't beg for mercy. Chapter 3664. Ha, you're not stupid. If that's the case, before three pure ones could finish, a terrifying black flame emerged from the ground and blasted three pure ones' hand. Three pure ones' expression changed, and he released his right hand, barely dodging the black flame. However, the black flame was not ordinary. A black spark landed on the back of three pure ones' hand and ignited it. Three pure ones snorted, and the white strands of his horsetail whisk wrapped around his right hand, completely extinguishing the black flame. Then three pure ones looked coldly at another figure that walked out of the hall. "Purple Star Lord? You've improved quite quickly." Three pure ones frowned. The other person who came out was Purple Star Lord. At this moment, Purple Star Lord's body was burning with a strange black flame, and within the black flame, there was a strange cry. It was the cry of the phoenix. Purple Star Lord had obtained the phoenix's inheritance, and it had helped him a lot. His cultivation speed was unbelievably fast. Originally, Purple Star Lord's cultivation was far below the green-haired corpse's, but now, his cultivation had surpassed the corpse's, reaching the late stage of the fifth decay. "Brother Purple Star Lord, thank you for saving my life." The green-haired corpse quickly saluted Purple Star Lord. Purple Star Lord waved his hand and said, "You're welcome. We're all Ryuka, so we should help each other. However, there are some people who are ungrateful and shameless, and now they want to repay kindness with enmity. Have their hearts been eaten by dogs?" Three pure ones narrowed his eyes and sneered, "Brother Purple Star Lord, you know our situation now. The Golden Universe Army is already at our gates. Zhuan has been crippled, and I'm afraid he's still unconscious. Even his divine artifact was destroyed by the Golden Universe Godlord. What chance do we have of winning now? You Ryuka want to die, but that doesn't mean we want to die. Why don't you help us and let us hand you over, while we surrender to the Golden Universe Army. You Ryuka are doomed anyway. Purple Star Lord and the green-haired corpses' expressions changed, and their eyes were filled with anger. Black King, Old Ancestor Nine-Tailed Fox, you guys take the lead and capture the Long family clansmen. I'll personally capture Zhuowen and these two fellows. Then, I'll open the array and offer them to the Golden Corner God Lord. San Qing instructed indifferently. The Black King's eyes flickered with hesitation. The other forefathers led by the Nine-Tailed Fox ancestor were also hesitant. Brother San Qing, what we're doing is against the laws of nature. After all, Ryuka had helped us before. Why should we make things difficult for Ryuka? Since we have all agreed to surrender, we will leave the valley and go to the Golden Corner Army to surrender. There's no need to involve the Ryuka. The Black King gritted his teeth, said Yi Futian. The other forefathers also voiced their agreement with the Black King. Don't you want to contribute? God Lord Golden Corner has already contacted me. As long as we can bring Zhuowen and the Ryuka to the Jinyu army, it will be a great achievement for us. When the Jinyu army completely occupies the Wanderer Galaxy, we will all have our own territory. If we surrender now, we won't be able to contribute anything. We will only be ordinary members, and we might even become slaves of the Jinyu army. Are you willing to surrender yourselves to them? To become slaves? Now, you have a great opportunity in front of you. It will determine your future status and achievements in the Jinyu Galaxy. San Qing said patiently. As soon as he said this, the three forefathers were immediately tempted. They called out to San Qing and led the forefathers to capture the Ryuka. The Black King shook his head and stood where he was. He did not move. Black King, are you going against me? San Qing narrowed his eyes. The Black King shook his head and said, San Qing, I have never thought of standing against you, but I don't want to do anything that goes against my conscience. San Qing laughed coldly and said, if that's the case, I won't force you. When the Jinyu army rewards you based on your contributions in the future, don't regret it. You guys have guts. How dare you attack the Long family without permission? The faces of the green-haired mummy and star monarch North Myrtle darkened when they saw the elites of the human and outsider races running around in the valley to capture the Long clan members. They dashed out in an attempt to stop them. However, as soon as they rushed out, they were stopped in midair by a white horsetail whisk. Crepe Myrtle, Green Hat, your opponent is me. San Qing took a step forward, and countless white horsetail whisk turned into a sea that swept Crepe Myrtle and Green Hair Mummy into it. Boom, 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 boom. Suddenly, there were terrifying explosions in the sea of white horsetail whisks. Crepe Myrtle and Green Hair Mummy joined forces to fight San Qing. However, from the looks of it, Myrtle Star Sovereign and the green-furred corpse were at a complete disadvantage. It wouldn't be long before the two of them were defeated by the three purities. The Black King watched the battle in the sea of white horsetail whisks, and his fists were clenched tightly. In the end, he released them weakly. In the middle of the main hall, there was a circular shield. There were 5 figures inside the shield. 3 of them were men, and 2 of them were women. One of them was a handsome young man. This youth's face was very young and tender. He was probably around 12 or 13 years old, but his eyes were filled with unswerving determination. He was Zhuojunan, Zhuowen's son. The other 4 were Mu Chenxue, Feng Shiyao, Long Xiaotian, and Zhuowen's doppelganger. Zhuowen's doppelganger was pale and bloodless. His eyes were tightly shut as he lay on Mu Chenxue's thighs. If not for the faint breathing of Zhuowen's doppelganger, one would have thought that he was a corpse. Mother, Uncle Ziwei, Uncle Green Hat, and the others are fighting the old bastards 3 pure ones outside. I have to go out and help them. Zhuojunan stood up when he heard the fighting outside. His eyes were filled with anger. Zhuojunan, you are not allowed to go. You are too weak. If you go out, you will only die in vain. You will also distract Crepe Myrtle and Green Hat. Mu Chenxue shouted. Zhuojunan's head drooped as he slammed his fist on the ground and roared, "It's my fault for being too weak. If I had father's strength, I would be able to help him. But I can't do anything now." Mu Chenxue watched as Zhuojun and slammed his fists into the ground in self-reproach. Her heart ached as she stopped Zhuojun. she gently said, Jing, your talent is greater than mine and your father's. Your potential is limitless. You are also our only bloodline. You are also the hope of Ryuka. So, listen to me and listen to me. Listen to me, follow your grandfather and grandmother, and leave this place. In the future, the Long family will depend on you. Chapter 3665. What about father and mother? Zhuojun and asked subconsciously. Mu Chenxue sighed and gently stroked Zhuowen's doppelganger, who is still unconscious. Your father is the pillar of Ryuka. He can't leave, and he shouldn't leave. Your father and I will stay. If father and mother don't leave, then I won't leave either. Zhuojun and bit his lips and suppressed his emotions. Mu Chenxue frowned. Just as she was about to scold Zhuowen for being disobedient, she felt some movement from Zhuowen, who was lying on her lap. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. Husband, you're finally awake. Mu Chenxue said with joy. Father. Zhuojun, Long Xiaotian, and Feng Xiao quickly rushed forward with joy on their faces. Father, I won't leave you guys behind. If we leave together. If we die together. Zhuojun, and threw himself into Zhuowen's arms. The emotions that he had been suppressing suddenly exploded. Mu Chenxue felt sad in her heart, but she knows that Zhuojun and is Ryuka's future hope. In this time of crisis, they can stay, but Zhuojun and must leave. Otherwise, Ryuka's bloodline will end. Zhuowen slowly propped himself up and hugged Zhuojun. He smiled and said, Jing, it's okay now. I won't let you guys leave me. Also, from now on, no one can touch Ryuka. Mu Chenxue, Long Xiaotian, and Feng Xiao looked at each other. They didn't understand what Zhuowen meant. I'm back, Zhuowen said solemnly. Mu Chenxue and the other two were stunned for a moment, and then they were overjoyed. After Zhuowen entered the Ruthless Pearl, his doppelganger told Mu Chenxue, Long Xiaotian, Feng Xiao, Crepe Myrtle Star, and Green Hat about this matter. They all knew that Zhuowen's strongest person now was his original body. His doppelganger was too weak. If his original body was still here, Zhuowen could rely on the 9 Tribulations sword formation to fight with Golden Corner God. Did Wushang come out? Mu Chenxue quickly asked. Zhuowen shook his head with a bitter smile and said, Wushang gave me the opportunity to leave. It's really a long story. Thus, Zhuowen briefly told Mu Chenxue and the others about what had happened in the Ruthless and Desireless Pearl. When Mu Chenxue and the others heard this, they all sighed. They also did not expect that the final result was actually such a dramatic scene. In the end, the Ruthless Pearl actually tore through the air and disappeared into the chaotic starry sky. Until now, its whereabouts were completely unknown. Although I don't know where the exact location of the Ruthless Pearl is, I know that the place that the Ruthless Pearl went to must be the 100 territories beyond the realm. Zhuowen said with certainty. Long Xiaotian, Mu Chenxue, and the rest exchanged glances. Regarding the 100 territories beyond the realm, they had long heard about it from Zhuowen. Even regarding the Primordial Chaos Path, they had long understood that the Primordial Chaos Path was a passageway that led to the 100 territories beyond the realm. In the chaotic starry sky, without the guidance of the Primordial Chaos Path, it was very easy to lose one's direction and eventually die in the process of drifting in the chaotic starry sky. Right at this moment, an explosion came from the palace door. Immediately, the palace door exploded with a loud bang. A figure fell into the palace door in a sorry state. Zhuowen and the rest looked in the direction of the sound and recognized the figure. It was Green Hat. At this moment, Green Hat's mummified body had become a scene of devastation. Green blood was constantly splashing out from the wounds on his body. Green Hat struggled to get up. He looked at Zhuowen and the others who were within the barrier in the palace and said in a deep voice, Master, why haven't you left yet? As soon as Green Hat finished speaking, another figure was sent flying and heavily smashed into Green Hat's body. Pucci. Green Hat's expression changed slightly. He was sent flying again by the figure and landed not far from the barrier where Zhuowen and the others were. The second figure was Myrtle Star's Star Monarch. The black flames around Purple Star Sovereign were almost extinguished. There was still black blood at the corner of his mouth that had not dried up. At the same time, he was constantly coughing up blood. It seemed that his injuries were not light. Green Hat, are you all right? Purple Star Sovereign struggled to stand up and looked at Green Hat, who had become his cushion. He hurriedly asked with concern. I'm not dead yet, Green Hat grimaced. His exposed ribs were all broken. It was difficult for him to even move. He could only sit and wait for his death. You two are really tenacious. A cold voice came from outside the broken palace door. Immediately after, 3 pure ones, dressed in Taoist robes, slowly walked into the palace with a horsetail whisk in his right hand. He glanced at the heavily injured Purple Star Sovereign and Green Hat, then his gaze fell on Zhuan in the center of the palace, who was being supported by Muchen Xue. Master Zhue, it seems that your injuries are not light. Seeing you like this, I'm really worried. 3 pure one's lips curved into a smug smile. When he saw that Zhuan was seriously injured, he sighed softly in his heart. Zhuan gave him too much pressure. Zhuan had left a deep impression on him when he killed Bing Hui. At that time, he almost revered Zhuan like a god and didn't dare to disobey him. However, after the 3 battles between God Lord Golden Corner and Zhuan, and after seeing that Zhuan was getting worse and worse, 3 pure one's reverence for Zhuan gradually disappeared. Especially when he saw that Zhuan was so injured that even standing up was difficult for him. Instead, he felt a strange sense of joy in his heart. Zhuan also had such a day. 3 pure ones, what are you trying to do by barging into my palace without my permission? Zhuan narrowed his eyes and calmly looked at 3 pure ones, who was slowly walking over. Seeing that Zhuan didn't seem to be flustered at all, 3 pure ones was suspicious. He couldn't help but stop and size up Zhuan with vigilance. He knew that not only was Zhuan powerful, but he was also a powerful god formation master. He wouldn't rashly approach Zhuan like this. Seeing 3 pure ones stop in time, Zhuan felt pity in his heart. As long as 3 pure ones took another step forward, he would immediately enter the absolute killing grand array set up inside the palace. Unfortunately, 3 pure ones was seriously too cautious. However, Zhuan did not show these on the surface. Oh, Lord Zhue, the valley's current situation, I think you've seen it too, right? The valley's grand array can't hold on for much longer. I came over to suggest that Lord Zhue, you give the order to have the valley surrender immediately. This way, it will also reduce many meaningless sacrifices. 3 pure ones said with a fake smile. Surrender? That will depend on whether you have the ability to make me surrender or not. Zhuan said coldly. But 3 pure ones laughed loudly. He looked at Zhuan with a cold gaze and said, Oh, you also have such a day. If it were before, why would you say so much to a traitor like me? You directly attack me. But you didn't. Looks like your injuries are really not light. Now you've become so timid. Zhuan looked at 3 pure ones calmly. He silently looked at 3 pure ones, who was laughing wildly without saying a word. 3 pure ones was right. His clone's origin had been injured. If he wanted to recover, he would need a lot of resources and time. Chapter 3666. Green Hat, Crepe Myrtle, come to my side. If he dares to touch me, I will make him regret it. Zhuan called Green Hat and Crepe Myrtle Star Lord over and gave them a top-grade healing elixir for them to consume. When San Qing saw that Zhuan had casually given out such top-grade healing elixirs, his eyes flashed with greed. He had long known that Zhuan was an extremely powerful alchemist and a powerful array master. It was said that he had a heaven-breaking divine elixir on him. He was extremely wealthy. If he could obtain the things on Zhuowen's body, then wouldn't he be rich? Zhuowen, don't you care about your Ryuka people? San Qing smiled. Zhuan narrowed his eyes and looked coldly at San Qing. You dare to touch my Ryuka people? San Qing laughed and said disdainfully, Look at yourself now. What power do you have to resist me? You will regret it. Zhuowen's voice was very calm, so calm that it was terrifying. San Qing's smile faded as he felt a chill run down his spine. This Zhuowen is but a cripple now. He's not my match at all. If not for his array, I would have taken him down immediately. Why should I be afraid of him? San Qing thought to himself. Moreover, he had already discussed this with the Golden Corner Lord. With the Golden Corner Lord as his backer, he was even more fearless. Thinking of this, San Qing took out his communication jade talisman and ordered the people who were capturing the Ryuka people to bring all the Ryuka people over. Not long after, the forefather of the nine-tailed fox tribe led a group of bound people into the main hall in a grandiose fashion. When Zhuowen saw the group of people who were tied up, his face immediately became gloomy, and his eyes were filled with rage. San Qing really dared to touch the Ryuka people. "Three pure ones, you old bastard! How dare you attack the weak clansmen of our long clan?" Zhuojun and shouted angrily at three pure ones. San Qing looked at Zhuowen indifferently and said, "Your son really doesn't resemble you at all. You can't keep your cool at all. You old bastard, believe it or not, I'll beat you until you're looking for your teeth on the ground." Zhuojun was enraged. He stomped his right foot, intending to charge towards the three pure ones. Zhuowen reacted quickly and grabbed Zhuojun's right arm, stopping him in time. However, Zhuowen's wound was also affected because of this. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face was extremely pale. "Father, are you all right?" Zhuojun reacted and hurriedly hugged the fallen Zhuowen, his face full of self-blame. "Junin, you're too young. The three purities were goading you just now. Don't fall for it," Zhuowen said solemnly. Zhuojun's face was full of shame as he whispered, "Father, I'm sorry. I was too impulsive." Zhuowen patted Zhuojun and looked at San Qing's hand. He said indifferently, "San Qing, the Ryuka have treated you well, right? If you insist on surrendering, the Ryuka will not object and will naturally send you out. However, why did you attack our Ryuka tribesmen? Isn't this too much?" San Qing sneered, "Have you not seen the truth? Not only do we want to surrender, but we also want to obtain a certain position in the Golden Universe Army's camp. That Golden Universe Godmaster has already told me that he invaded the galaxy to find a new home. Secondly, he came for Moyan Wushang and you. If we can hand you and Moyan Wushang over to Golden Universe Godmaster, it will be a great merit." Zhuojun looked angrily at San Qing and said in a low voice, "Despicable." Zhuowen calmed down and said indifferently, "Since your target is me, I can agree to go with you to see Golden Universe Godmaster. However, you can't attack the Ryuka tribesmen." "Are you serious?" San Qing's eyes lit up. Yun is seriously injured and San Qing knows that Zhuowen is not his match. What he is afraid of now is the array formation set up by Zhuowen in the main hall. If he was not afraid of the array formation, he would have rushed in and captured Zhuowen. Now that Zhuowen had taken the initiative to go with him, he naturally could not ask for anything more. Zhuojun, Mu Chenxue and the others looked at Zhuowen worriedly. They wanted to dissuade Zhuowen but were comforted by Zhuowen. "Put the Ryuka tribesmen in the main hall and I will come out with you." Zhuowen looked at the entrance of the main hall and the group of Ryuka tribesmen who were tied up and said indifferently, "I also want to take Moyan Wushang with me." San Qing said, "Wushang has gone missing and I can't find her now. If you want Wushang, then our deal is over." "I can't hand her over." Zhuowen shook his head. San Qing frowned slightly and looked at Zhuowen seriously. After confirming that Zhuowen did not intend to continue negotiating with him, he had no choice but to agree at the last minute. San Qing was now eager to perform meritorious deeds. After all, Golden Universe Godmaster did not give him much time. If he did not quickly deal with this matter, Golden Universe Godmaster's army would break into the valley. When that time came, he would not be able to perform any meritorious deeds. Although he couldn't find Moyan of Wushang, he was able to capture Zhuowen alive. That was a great contribution. "Swear to the Heavenly Tao before I release your tribesmen," San Qing said worriedly. Zhuowen did not hesitate to swear the Heavenly Tao oath. Then, San Qing ordered his men to release the Ryuka tribesmen. After the Ryuka tribesmen were released, they immediately entered the main hall and came to the area surrounded by the array formation. Zhuowen walked slowly to the door of the hall. His injuries were so serious that he staggered as he walked. Mu Chenxue wanted to help him but was rejected by Zhuowen. He did not trust San Qing's character. If Mu Chenxue followed him out, San Qing might attack Mu Chenxue. That would be bad. When Zhuan walked to the door of the hall, Sanqing waved the horsetail whisk in his right hand and countless white silk threads wrapped around Zhuan's body, drowning him. Finally, they wrapped around him and formed a cocoon. Ha, Zhuan, you've also fallen into my hands one day. The three purities laughed loudly. In the main hall, the Ryuka tribesmen were dejected. Their eyes were filled with grief and anger, and their fists were clenched tightly. Zhuan suppressed his anger and glared at the three pure ones. Everyone, you can only live for a few days. Cherish the few days you have left. When Golden Universe God Master's army breaks in, you are all dead. Sanqing laughed and led the tribesmen out of the main hall. Outside the main hall, the Black King was still standing in the same place. He had seen everything that had happened in the main hall. When Sanqing walked past him, the Black King suddenly stretched out his hand and stopped Sanqing. Chapter 3667. Sanqing's face darkened. He looked at the Black King coldly and said, "Black King, I didn't blame you for not helping me capture the Ryuka because we know each other. But now, aren't you going overboard? How dare you ask me to let Zhuan go? Now, get out of my way. I won't blame you for your rude behavior." The Black King's gaze was resolute. He looked at the three pure ones calmly. His body, which was blocking the three pure ones, did not move an inch. "Black King, you're asking for it?" Sanqing was furious. His right hand formed a palm and hit the Black King's chest. The Black King did not resist and was sent flying by the palm strike. Blood spurted out and he crashed heavily into a stone wall behind him. The Black King stood up with difficulty. His face was pale, but he still stood in front of Sanqing. "Sanqing, I'm begging you. Let Zhuan go this time. Maybe Zhuan's master will arrive in time and will be saved." The Black King endured the pain, his voice carrying a hint of pleading. Lian Meng, Du Huacan, and many others who knew Zhuan came forward and stopped Sanqing. They knelt on the ground and begged for mercy for the Black King. "You guys are really something. Do you really think I won't kill you?" Sanqing's eyes flashed fiercely, but he did not attack. He knew that if he killed the Black King and the others in front of everyone, it would be difficult to convince them. Take them away and watch over them. If they can reflect on themselves, then set them free. If they don't, then keep them locked up. One said to the nine-tailed fox elder. The nine-tailed fox elder nodded and led the foreign tribe elites to lock up the Black King, Lian Meng, and the others. Can't you see the situation? Now that the Galaxy Traveler has lost its momentum, you're still protecting Zhuan and the others. You're digging your own grave. Sanqing looked at the Black King and the others being taken away and shook his head. He scoffed at their actions. "Zhuan is already in my hands. You can go out and hand him over to the Divine Master." Three pure ones mumbled to himself as he walked out of the valley. Zhuan had set up a series of arrays around the valley. The people inside the valley could leave, but the people outside the valley could not enter. They needed someone to guide them. Three pure heavens had long figured out the pattern of the valley's array, so he did not rashly leave during the few days he had been in contact with God Lord Golden Corner. Instead, he waited until he had completely captured Zhuan before preparing to leave the valley and head to the designated location that God Lord Golden Corner had mentioned. Thousands of miles away from the valley, there was a vast plain. At this moment, on the plains, there was a black mass. It was the encampment of many troops. The number of patrolling troops in the encampment was even greater. This was the army of the Golden Corner's starry sky. Although God Lord Golden Corner had lost most of his troops because of Zhuan, the number of troops left behind was actually very large. In addition, God Lord Golden Corner had summoned another batch of troops in the Golden Corner Galaxy over the past few years. Therefore, the size of the army that God Lord Golden Corner brought this time was not any smaller than when he had first arrived. In fact, it was even larger. Of course, to God Lord Golden Corner, the greatest loss was not the troops, but the dozens of divine protectors who had died. They were all Fifth Blight elites. How much resources and time would it take to cultivate a divine protector like that? Now, there were only 7 divine protectors left out of the original 49. At this moment, in the largest mechanical fortress, God Lord Golden Corner frowned slightly. During this period of time, he had been trying to contact Gong Ji Lu. He wanted to inform Gong Ji Lu that he was about to conquer the final area of the Xianmi heavenly domain. However, he discovered that he was unable to contact Gong Ji Lu. This made God Lord Golden Corner feel very strange. In the past, whenever he contacted Gong Ji Lu, he would receive a reply very quickly. However, a few days had passed, and Gong Ji Lu had not replied once. Could something have happened? God Lord Golden Corner muttered in a low voice, Master Gong must have something else to do. That's why he didn't notice the message I sent him. At this moment, a mechanical soldier walked in from outside the fortress. Master God, there's a human called 3 Pure Ones outside. He wants to see you. The mechanical soldier said respectfully. God Lord Golden Corner raised his eyebrows. He thought that 3 Pure Ones was quite efficient. He had actually come to see him so quickly. It seemed that he had succeeded. Invite him in. God Lord Golden Corner said. The mechanical soldier obeyed and left the fortress. Not long after, the mechanical soldier led 3 Pure Ones into the fortress. After the mechanical soldier left, 3 Pure Ones hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed to God Lord Golden Corner. His words were full of flattery and reverence. So you're 3 Pure Ones? I admire you. You're a person who understands the situation and knows how to size up the situation. Don't worry. With your strength, if you join my Golden Corner Starry Sky, I won't treat you badly. At this point, God Lord Golden Corner continued, also, I'm afraid you didn't come here just to surrender, right? 3 Pure Ones smiled slightly and waved the horsetail whisk in his hand. Suddenly, the surface of the white cocoon-like sphere floating behind him began to flow continuously. Countless white threads began to squirm. Finally, from the gaps of the white threads, a wretched figure fell to the ground. Master God, this person is Jun. He's also the leader of the resistance against you. I've brought this person here to present to you, Master God. 3 Pure Ones pointed at Zhuowen with a smile. God Lord Golden Corner then began to size up Zhuowen. He slowly walked toward Zhuowen and lifted Zhuowen up. I really didn't expect that a mere late-stage 5th Blight cultivator like you would be so powerful. Also, you actually have a Heavenbreaker divine artifact. Where did you get that divine artifact? God Lord Golden Corner asked curiously. Zhuowen's gaze was very calm from beginning to end. He asked in return, the divine staff on you should have been lent to you by Gong Ji Lu, right? A 3rd-stage Heavenbreaker divine artifact is indeed much more powerful than a 2nd-stage Heavenbreaker divine artifact. But that's it. God Lord Golden Corner was stunned and immediately looked at Zhuowen strangely. Was this guy sick in the head? He was already seriously injured by him, but he was still so arrogant. Was his brain damaged by him? Ha! If Master God's divine staff is just like this, then your divine artifact really isn't much at all. Zhuowen, you have to think about who beat you up like this. A loser should have the appearance of a loser begging for pity. Don't always act high and mighty. 3 Pure Ones mocked. Zhuowen turned his head and looked at 3 Pure Ones seriously. 3 Pure Ones felt his hair stand on end from Zhuowen's gaze and couldn't help but frown. 3 Pure Ones, you'll regret this very soon. Regret bringing me out of the valley and handing me over to God Lord Golden Corner. Zhuowen said calmly. 3 Pure Ones was stunned and immediately laughed loudly. He said, I think you're crazy. You can't even protect yourself now, what can you do to me? What do I regret? As he said, 3 Pure Ones pressed his right hand on Zhuowen's shoulder as if comforting Zhuowen. In fact, he was using power to blast into Zhuowen's body. Chapter 3668. God Master Golden Corner had seen San Qing's trick, but he didn't stop them. Instead, he said, tell me the whereabouts of Moyan Wushang. If you can provide me with information about Moyan Wushang, I can let you live. I can even put you in an important position. What do you think? San Qing's expression changed when he heard God Master Golden Corner's words. Just as he was about to speak, he saw God Master Golden Corner's sharp gaze. His heart trembled and he didn't dare say another word. However, San Qing was extremely anxious. Zhuowen's strength had left a deep impression on him. Now that Zhuan was in a weakened state, he had dared to make a move. He had originally thought that God Master Golden Corner wouldn't let Zhuan live. That was why he had agreed to capture Zhuan alive. However, God Master Golden Corner was actually planning to give Zhuan a chance to live. If Zhuan was really allowed to live, there would be no place for Sanqing in the future. Haha, I'm really sorry. I really don't know the whereabouts of Moyan Wushang. Zhuan refused bluntly. Very good. You have done very well. In that case, there is no need for me to keep you alive. You no longer have any value. Sanqing, I'll leave this guy to you. God Master Golden Corner said faintly. However, before you kill this guy, find out where he hid his divine weapon. Zhuan's spirit ring had already been taken off by the mechanical soldier and handed to God Master Golden Corner when they had entered the fortress. God Master Golden Corner hadn't found anything valuable in Zhuan's spirit ring, so he had guessed that the divine weapon had been hidden by Zhuan. Only Zhuan knew that all his precious items were basically placed in the Great World. The Great World was a world that he had created. Other people simply couldn't detect any traces of it. Even if they did, they wouldn't be able to enter the Great World. The Great World would only collapse if his original body died. However, there was a chance that the items in the Great World would fall out. Thank you, Lord God, for your understanding. Three Pure Ones was overjoyed. He picked up Zhuan and was about to pull Zhuan to the side when the mechanical soldier from before rushed in. What is it? Why are you so flustered? God Lord Golden Corner said unhappily. The soldier trembled as he said, Divine Lord, the base we set up in the depths of the natural moat has been destroyed. What? Who did it? God Lord Golden Corner angrily roared as he suddenly stood up, his face somewhat red from anger. The base in the depths of the natural moat was the most important logistical base of the Golden Corner's starry sky. Many resources were stored there. These resources were extremely important to their army. After all, these mechanical life forms also needed energy to unleash their power, and the natural moat base was their temporary energy supply station. Now that their base had been destroyed, their battle time had been severely shortened, which was very disadvantageous for them. I don't know either. Just now, a patrol team was planning to enter the depths of the natural moat to replenish their energy. Only then did they realize that their base had been destroyed. It said that it has been destroyed for several days. The mechanical soldier said, The base has been destroyed, and we can't contact Master Gong. God Lord Golden Corner quickly calmed down and immediately contacted Gong Kilyu and the base. Gong Kilyu was in the chaotic cosmos outside the base. If someone destroyed the base, Gong Kilyu would definitely not stand idly by. However, the base had been destroyed, and Gong Kilyu could not be contacted. This gave God Lord Golden Corner a bad premonition. Boom, boom, boom. Just as God Lord Golden Corner was deep in thought, violent tremors came from the entire fortress. Outside the fortress, terrifying sounds of explosions could be heard. It was as if countless bombs had been detonated in the surroundings. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Someone is attacking our base. Outside the fortress, another mechanical soldier hurriedly ran in to inform God Lord Golden Corner. God Lord Golden Corner kicked the mechanical soldier away and said with a gloomy face, You don't have to say it. I can tell. I want to see just who dares to attack this lord's fortress. God Lord Golden Corner quickly walked out of the fortress. Three Pure One's eyes flickered as he carried Zhuan and followed closely behind. He was also very curious as to which blind fellow would actually attack the Golden Corner army at this critical juncture. Was this not seeking one's own death? In the sky above the huge fortress base, a divine ship was high up in the sky. Dozens of black cannon muzzles appeared on both sides of the divine ship. Zhuan's main body stood on the deck and looked down at the mechanical fortress below. The dozens of cannon muzzles on both sides of the divine ship were currently firing intense energy cannons. These energy cannons fell like rain and landed on the mechanical fortress, causing terrifying explosions. Gong Kilyu's divine ship is not bad. It even has such powerful cannons. Zhuan stood on the deck and looked down at the mechanical army that was constantly fleeing below. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. During the period when he returned from Heaven's Moat, He had already begun to refine this divine ship. Zhuan had just discovered these cannons on the divine ship, and they were the only offensive equipment on the divine ship. Although it was a little monotonous, its power was extremely terrifying. The power of each energy cannon was close to a heaven-breaking rank 1 divine artifact. However, these cannons consumed chaos crystals. Each shot required 1 chaos crystal. Zhuowen's crazy bombardment consumed a lot of energy. Even he felt heartache. However, the effect obtained was astonishing. The Golden Corner army below was almost completely routed, and their base was already in ruins in just a few breaths of time. The army suffered heavy casualties. Who is it? Dare to sneak attack our Golden Corner army? Are you tired of living? A loud shout came over. A figure rushed out of the smoke and dust, bringing 6 figures with him, and quickly rushed toward the divine ship. These 7 figures all had powerful auras and were extremely fast. While avoiding the energy cannons, they quickly approached the divine ship. Zhuan also noticed these 7 figures and also recognized that these 7 figures were the remaining 7 divine protectors of the Golden Corner army. Although the cannons were powerful, their flexibility was too poor. These 7 divine protectors' cultivation were all 5th Blight realm. Furthermore, their speed was extremely fast. Dodging the cannons was more than enough. When the first divine protector arrived on the divine ship's deck, he still had a hideous smile on his face. But his hideous smile was quickly replaced by fear, only to see an ethereal purple blade flash out, aiming straight for the space between his eyebrows. The purple blade was too fast, arriving in a flash, slashing through the space between his eyebrows. Then his head exploded. A divine soul rapidly spilled out, fleeing into the distance. Those who come are guests. Since you're already here, then stay. Don't be in a hurry to leave. Zhuowen's cold voice came over. He cast his divine ability, Primordial Life Annihilation. A purple river surged out, sweeping up that divine soul and annihilating it. The instant Zhuowen instantly killed a divine protector, he also moved at the same time. Taking a step out, he rushed out of the divine ship and faced the remaining 6 divine protectors. And around him, ethereal purple blades began to appear one after another, spinning continuously. At the same time, Zhuowen released 6 floating blades, killing 1 person with each blade. Pucci? Zhuowen's speed was extremely fast, turning into an afterimage in midair, passing by those 6 divine protectors. Chapter 3669. When Zhuowen killed the 7 divine protectors in an instant like he was cutting vegetables, many soldiers around the panicked Golden Corner army saw it clearly. The 7 divine protectors have been killed. A ruthless person has arrived. Everyone be careful. Where's the Lord God? As long as the Lord God is here, this person will die no matter how strong he is. The army, which had been panicking inside the energy cannons, became even more panicked when they saw the 7 divine protectors being killed in an instant. The encampment on the vast plains was in complete disarray. The sound of cannonballs exploding, shrill screams, and chaotic footsteps intertwined together. It was like an extremely chaotic sound that was rather ear-piercing. At that moment, God Lord Golden Corner had already left the fortress, and 3 pure ones followed closely behind with Zhuowen's clone. When the 2 of them saw the miserable state of the camp, their pupils constricted involuntarily. That is? Lord Gong's divine ship? How is that possible? God Lord Golden Corner quickly noticed the source of the energy cannons in the sky. He immediately saw the divine ship floating in the air above the camp. He was all too familiar with this divine ship. It was the divine ship that Gong Ji Lu and NIC were on. At the same time, he saw an unfamiliar youth on the deck of the divine ship. This youth had a long and narrow face, a pair of beautiful red phoenix eyes, and a cold smile on his lips. This handsome youth was naturally Zhuowen. Of course, this was not Zhuowen's original appearance, but he had changed his appearance. God Lord Golden Corner and 3 pure ones immediately saw that Zhuowen had changed his appearance. However, because Zhuowen's disguise technique was extremely brilliant, the 2 of them could only see that this person had changed his appearance, but could not see his true appearance. Boom, boom, boom. Just as God Lord Golden Corner was in a daze, several energy cannons had already aimed at him and instantly enveloped them. A terrifying explosion of light suddenly exploded, and God Lord Golden Corner and 3 Pure Ones were drowned in it. 3 Pure Ones panicked. He could feel the terrifying power of these energy cannons. With his strength, he would probably be seriously injured if he took one hit. It was also at this moment that he loosened his grip on Zhuowen's clone. Zhuowen's doppelganger immediately seized the opportunity and used the last of his strength to punch 3 Pure Ones. The 3 purities were completely focused on the energy cannons in the sky and did not guard against Zhuowen's doppelganger at all. As a result, he was hit squarely in the chest. Pucci. 3 Pure Ones spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. His grip on Zhuowen loosened. Bang! Zhuowen's clone fell to the ground, and with a muffled groan, blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. That strike just now was the last of his strength. After using that attack, he didn't even have the strength to stand up. At this moment, the energy cannons had already hit them head-on. Countless explosions and lights flashed before their eyes and ears. God Lord Golden Corner solemnly took out the Snake Shadow Divine Staff and raised it above his head. The explosive energy caused by the energy cannons was blocked more than 10 meters away from him. It was as if a powerful barrier had formed around the Golden Corner Divine Lord within a dozen meters. Cough, cough, cough. 3 Pure Ones struggled to stand up. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked at Zhuowen, who was not far away. He and Zhuowen were very lucky. They happened to be in the area protected by God Lord Golden Corner, so they were not affected by the energy cannons. Little bastard, I didn't expect you to still have the strength to sneak an attack on me at this critical juncture. However, your actions are extremely unwise because you have angered me. And the price for angering me is that you will die now. 3 Pure Ones growled and charged toward Zhuowen. He lashed out with his horsetail whisk, which turned into countless sharp needles, all aimed at Zhuowen's vitals. Zhuowen's doppelganger lay on the ground and raised his head with difficulty to look at 3 Pure Ones. A mocking smile appeared on his lips. 3 Pure Ones, the one who is going to die is not me, but you. 3 Pure Ones was stunned. Just as he was about to mock Zhuowen for spouting nonsense, he saw that the white strands of his horsetail whisk that were aimed at Zhuowen were crumbling inch by inch. And the speed of the crumbling was extremely fast. In an instant, it spread toward him. Bam! The horsetail whisk exploded completely. A terrifying energy coiled around 3 Pure One's arm like maggots. Instantly, his right arm exploded. A strong sense of danger rose in 3 Pure One's heart. He also felt an intense fear of death that he had never felt before. It was so intense that he could not move his legs at all. It was as if they had taken root, and he stood motionless on the spot. Watch out! Suddenly, God Lord Golden Corner roared. With the Snake Shadow Staff in his hand, he had already arrived in front of 3 Pure Ones. Bam! A purple saber suddenly landed on the Snake Shadow Staff, creating countless sparks. Countless black snake shadows appeared on the surface of the Snake Shadow Staff and instantly devoured the purple saber radiance. Good reaction. An indifferent voice came from nearby. Dozens of meters in the air in front of 3 Pure Ones and God Lord Golden Corner, the evil youth slowly walked down from the air as if he was stepping on empty stairs. The evil youth landed beside Zhuowen's doppelganger and helped Zhuowen's doppelganger up. I never thought that you would be gone for so many years. All these years, I even lost contact with you. If I didn't have that innate connection with you, I would have thought that you had died. Zhuowen's doppelganger slowly stood up. He looked at the evil youth and could not help but smile. His smile was relaxed and comfortable. This is my miscalculation, but I'm finally back. The great world is still with you. Zhuowen's original body said in a low voice. Zhuowen's doppelganger nodded. With a flick of his finger, an indiscernible black dot landed in his original body's hand. Zhuowen kept his doppelganger in the great world. He had lost contact with his doppelganger for many years, and he realized that his doppelganger and his original body no longer had the same tacit understanding as before. Moreover, the memories of the two had also become different. After all, The lives the two had experienced in these 10-odd years were completely different. Therefore, there was some disharmony when they reunited now. However, Zhuan knew that after he fused the two different memories, the disharmony between the two would be completely repaired very quickly. "You, who the hell are you?" God Lord Golden Corner looked gravely at the evil youth before him. Although the aura of the evil youth before him seemed to be only at the early stage of the fifth blight on the surface, it gave him an extremely strong sense of danger. This feeling was somewhat similar to the oppressive feeling that Gong Qi Lu gave him back then. In other words, this evil youth before him was definitely a heaven-breaking realm powerhouse. And a heaven-breaking realm powerhouse whose cultivation was not suppressed by this starry sky. God Lord Golden Corner suddenly thought of something and asked in return, "You are the only heaven-breaking realm powerhouse in this starry sky, that is, that Zhuowen's master?" Zhuowen was stunned. He originally wanted to reveal his identity, but God Lord Golden Corner was too good at imagining things and immediately connected it to the so-called master that his doppelganger had made up. Chapter 3670. This seat has only been in seclusion for a few years, and such a huge change has occurred while roaming the starry sky. Also, what are you trash? You are neither human nor ghost, yet you dare to attack this seat's starry sky? Are you tired of living? Zhuowen said in an extremely pretentious manner. The three pure ones almost fainted from fright. He didn't think that Zhuowen really had a master. Moreover, this master seemed to be extremely powerful. God Lord Golden Corner's heart sank. He looked at the divine ship in the sky and had some bad thoughts. His mind was actually somewhat flustered. Where did you get this divine ship? God Lord Golden Corner suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and asked. Oh, I snatched this divine ship. I just came back from seclusion outside and saw two people sneakily hiding in this divine ship and spying on the space. I knew that those two people weren't good people with one look, so I killed them. Speaking of which, this divine ship is still my spoils of war. Zhuowen said casually. Gong Ji Lu and NIC were both heaven-breaking second transformation elites, and they even had powerful trump cards on them. Even if Zhuowen's divine sense had metamorphosed to heaven-breaking stage 3, his cultivation was too low. He really wasn't a match for these two people. At most, he could barely deal with one of them. If it weren't for the heartless and desireless Pearl creating an opportunity for him, he simply couldn't have killed Gong Ji Lu and NIC. What? Lord Gong and Lord Ni have died? God Lord Golden Corner's hands trembled. Although he had already thought of this possibility when he couldn't contact Gong Ji Lu, it was just a guess. Now that his guess was confirmed, his mind was in a mess, and he finally started to feel fear. This person even killed Gong Ji Lu and NIC. Would he be a match for him? No, the reason why Lord Gong was defeated by this person must be because he gave this snake shadow divine staff to me, so his strength fell greatly. That's why this person took advantage of the loophole. The snake shadow divine staff is a heaven-breaking stage 3 divine tool. Its power is unparalleled. No matter how strong this person is, how can he be stronger than the snake shadow divine staff? Moreover, after Lord Gong died, this snake shadow divine staff already has no owner. Won't it be mine in the future? Thinking of this, God Lord Golden Corner was no longer afraid. Three pure ones also came back to his senses. He glanced at the snake shadow divine staff in God Lord Golden Corner's hand and calmed down. He knew that the snake shadow divine staff in Divine Lord Golden Corner's hands was a heaven-breaking tier 3 divine artifact. Its power was extremely terrifying. He thought to himself, no matter how strong that Zhuowen's master was, could it be that he could still rival a heaven-breaking rank 3 divine artifact? Whether it's Zhuowen or Zhuowen's master, none of them are a match for the divine master. They've only come here to die. The three purities were full of confidence in God Lord Golden Corner. The gaze he used to look at Zhuowen was like looking at a dead man. Tell me your name. I, God Lord Golden Corner, do not kill nameless people. God Lord Golden Corner calmed down and said coldly. Unfortunately, I also have a habit, and that is, I never give names to people who are about to die. Zhuowen said indifferently. God Lord Golden Corner's face darkened. He snorted and said, "Since that's the case, I'll make an exception and kill a nameless person today." As he said that, God Lord Golden Corner took a step forward and instantly swept in front of Jun. The snake shadow divine staff in his hand exploded with a terrifying light. Jun was not afraid at all. He tapped the sword finger of his right hand on his forehead and unleashed a divine soul sword intent that slashed fiercely at God Lord Golden Corner. Bam bam bam. Immediately, endless green lotus fire accompanied by a terrifying sword light swept away all the attacks of the snake shadow divine staff. What kind of power is this? How can it be so powerful? God Lord Golden Corner grunted and could not help but retreat, his eyes revealing shock. The divine soul sword intent unleashed by Juan turned into afterimages in the air and constantly slashed at God Lord Golden Corner. And the attacks that God Lord Golden Corner mustered with energy and used the snake shadow divine staff as a medium were all shattered by this divine soul sword intent. Bam bam bam. God Lord Golden Corner leaped into the air, the countless snake shadows on the surface of the snake shadow divine staff suddenly expanding. Several thousand snake shadows appeared and covered God Lord Golden Corner's body. Juan held his hands behind his back as he quietly looked up at God Lord Golden Corner, who was surrounded by countless snake shadows. Interesting. This snake shadow divine staff truly lives up to its reputation as a rank 3 heaven-piercing divine artifact. Its power is truly extraordinary. Unfortunately, God Lord Golden Corner, you are too weak. You can't even use 1% of the snake shadow divine staff's power. Zhuowen shook his head. He pointed the finger of his right hand at the air, and the soul-based sword intent in the air changed direction. It tore through the air with a whoosh, and green lotus flames spread everywhere it passed, turning into a sea of green flames that filled the air. This sea of green lotus fire was so massive that it seemed to dye the entire sky blue. Bam bam bam. The divine soul sword intent was extremely fast, shuttling through the several thousand snake shadows. With each shuttling, the divine soul sword intent annihilated a snake shadow. In less than 10 breaths of time, the divine soul sword intent had shuttled through thousands of times. Because it was too fast, it seemed to have left behind numerous sword shadows in the air. The divine soul sword intent returned to Zhuowen's side and hovered above his shoulder blade. Then, Zhuan looked indifferently at God Lord Golden Corner in the air. "Is this all you've got? Isn't it too weak? To think that you even have a rank 3 heaven-piercing divine artifact. Too weak, ridiculously weak." Zhuan shook his head. He had been tempered by the desireless pearl all these years and experienced the baptism of countless illusions. His divine soul had been tempered thousands of times and had become even stronger. Not only had he consolidated the divine soul power that had just broken through to the heaven-piercing third transformation, but his divine soul had also improved further, most likely reaching the mid-stage of the heaven-piercing third transformation. His divine soul had transformed again, and the power of the divine soul sword intent released had increased by several times. In the past, the divine soul sword intent he had left in his clone could barely block God Lord Golden Corner. But now, the divine soul sword intent could easily suppress the snake shadow divine staff and kill God Lord Golden Corner. This? How is this possible? God Lord Golden Corner was stunned as he looked at the huge wound on his chest. Just now, after the divine soul sword intent had destroyed the last snake shadow, it had pierced through his chest. At this moment, the wound on his chest was still burning with a green lotus flame, and the scorching aura was even more overwhelming. "You? Sure enough? Lord Gong and the others were really killed by you. Me? I regret it." God Lord Golden Corner roared at the sky, his eyes filled with regret. When he saw the divine ship, he already knew that the young man in front of him was definitely not ordinary. However, he was still hoping for a fluke. Wasn't fighting with such an expert seeking his own death? God Lord Golden Corner's train of thought was quickly interrupted because the green lotus flame in his chest had suddenly spread and ignited his entire body. He screamed miserably in the green lotus flame as his body gradually turned into ashes. "No? Lord, I was wrong. I surrender. I surrender. Please don't kill me. I can be your slave as long as you let me go? God Lord Golden Corner screamed miserably in the air, begging for mercy. In the end, before he could finish his words, he was burned to ashes by the green lotus flame. Chapter 3671. Zhuowen picked up the Snake Shadow Divine Staff. He could sense the profound and powerful aura coming from the surface of the Snake Shadow Divine Staff, but his heart remained calm. The Snake Shadow Divine Staff was indeed very powerful, and it was also a level 3 heaven-breaking divine weapon. However, Jun was not good at this type of divine weapon. Speaking of which, the 9 Tribulation Sword formation that he had obtained was also not his best weapon. However, he only had a few heaven-breaking divine weapons, so he had always made do with them. How great would it be if I could get a heaven-breaking divine spear? Zhuowen was a little emotional. He had always used spears in his early years. To him, spear-type weapons were the most suitable weapons. However, he had never found a suitable spear weapon until now. Moreover, he was not an equipment refiner, so he had never thought of creating a divine weapon that belonged to him. Create a divine weapon that belongs to me? Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He had 3 heaven-breaking divine weapons, which were the 9 Tribulation Sword formation, the Snake Shadow Divine Staff, and Nic's Divine Bow. If he could reforge these 3 divine weapons, wouldn't it be enough to forge a divine spear? If he used a divine spear, his attacks would definitely be much stronger. Although Zhuowen didn't know anything about refining artifacts, with his current reputation, he could summon a group of the best artifact refiners in the universe and forge a divine artifact together. This was something he could do. Not far away, when San Qing saw the Golden Corner Divine Lord being burned to ashes by the Green Lotus fire, his eyes were filled with extreme fear. His body trembled violently. Even the Golden Corner Divine Lord was defeated? How can he be so strong? How can this guy be so strong? San Qing's mind was in a mess. Then, he realized that Hun had stopped in his tracks and was looking down at the Snake Shadow Divine Staff as if in a daze. This is a good chance to escape. San Qing was overjoyed. He immediately took out his flying divine weapon and fled in a panic. However, just as San Qing leaped onto the flying divine weapon, a sword light pierced through the air and slashed at the flying divine weapon. Bam! The flying divine artifact instantly exploded, and 3 pure ones fell to the ground, covered in dust. He only felt pain in his legs. Then, he realized that he had lost all feeling in his legs. Only then did he realize that his legs had been chopped off at some point in time. Blood splattered everywhere. Did I say you could leave? The 3 pure ones finally noticed that Jun, who had been staring at the Snake Shadow Divine Staff in a daze, was now looking at him with a cold gaze as he slowly walked over. "My lord, this has nothing to do with me. It was God Lord Golden Corner who forced me to do so." The 3 pure ones were still terrified, but they forced themselves to calm down and shift the blame. "If someone forces you to do it, you will do it? If I force you to commit suicide now, are you going to commit suicide in front of me?" Zhuowen mocked. "Sir, I'm also a member of the Coiling Starry Sky. You can't kill me. If you kill me, you will disappoint the Coiling Starry Sky." 3 pure ones made a final struggle and continued, "And you have no reason to kill me. We have no enmity between us. Killing me is unnecessary." Zhuowen stopped and looked down at 3 pure ones calmly. "Do you really think that we have no enmity between us?" 3 pure ones hurriedly said, "Yes, we have never met. Although you said that you are Zhuowen's master, I think we should settle the enmity between me and Zhuowen ourselves. If we let my master settle it, it would make Zhuowen look like a bully." Zhuowen smiled and completely removed the disguise on his face. His originally evil face completely changed into Zhuowen's original appearance. "Now, do you still think that we have no enmity between us?" Zhuowen said with a faint smile. When 3 pure ones saw Zhuowen's face, his eyes widened and he said in disbelief, You? You are Zhuowen? That's impossible. You were in my hands and you were severely injured. How could you be?" "Sir, you must be joking. In order to let you know before you die, I'll tell you the truth. All these years, the Zhuowen in the Ryuka Valley was only my doppelganger. The real Zhuowen has only returned recently, Zhuowen said calmly. 3 pure ones fell to the ground powerlessly. His mouth was full of bitterness as he looked at Zhuowen with a complicated expression. I didn't expect you to grow so quickly. When I was the master of the sky region, you were just an ant on the heavenly armor planet. Now, you are the strongest person under the coiling starry sky, and I am just an ant to you. It's really hard to predict the future. 3 pure ones suddenly laughed. However, his laughter did not last for long before it came to an abrupt end. Zhuowen silently looked at 3 pure ones, who was lying on the ground with dim eyes. Did he kill himself? Zhuowen squatted down and checked the state of 3 pure one's soul between his eyebrows. He found that his soul had already collapsed. At that moment, 3 pure ones had destroyed his own soul and died in front of Zhuowen. Zhuowen stood up and looked at 3 pure ones with a complicated expression. Although he now knew that 3 pure ones had been using him all along. They were master and disciple after all, and 3 pure ones had helped him many times. However, their standpoints were already different, and it was only a matter of time before they stood on opposite sides. Even if 3 pure ones did not surrender to the Golden Corner God, Zhuowen would kill 3 pure ones in the future. This was because he saw great ambition in 3 pure ones' eyes. This kind of person would not like to live under someone else's roof and be suppressed by others. One day, the 3 pure ones would definitely make a move against the Long family and fight with him. That day would be when 3 pure ones would destroy the heavens. However, the arrival of the Golden Corner army had completely disrupted the rhythm, causing 3 pure ones to make a decision in advance. Zhuowen casually dug a deep hole in the ground and buried 3 pure ones in the hole. Then he erected a jade tombstone in front of the grave. However, there were no inscriptions on the jade tombstone. Everything was blank. After doing this, Zhuowen found that the Golden Corner army's encampment had been completely turned into ruins. More than 90% of the Golden Corner army had been annihilated by the energy cannon. The rest of the Golden Corner army was either dead or injured. There was not much left of its military strength. Now, these remaining soldiers were fleeing toward the natural moat, trying to escape from this starry sky. Zhuowen did not care about these remaining soldiers. The Golden Corner God and 49 divine protectors had all died in his hands, and the army had lost more than 90% of its forces. The remaining defeated soldiers were not a threat at all. Zhuowen's divine telekinesis instantly scanned every corner of the encampment, but he frowned. There's no aura of that great divine master? Could it be that the great divine master was killed by the energy cannon? Zhuowen suddenly thought of the great divine master. He had long known that the great divine master was the one who had set up the large-scale teleportation formation that transported the army. Chapter 3672. Zhuowen scanned the encampment with his divine telekinesis, but he did not find any trace of the great divine master, not even his corpse. Oh no, this old man must have slipped away early. Zhuowen discovered a temporary teleportation array in a pile of rubble. However, the teleportation array had been destroyed, and he knew that it must have been set up by the great divine master. To heaven's moat. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy, and he did not stay there any longer. He went straight to heaven's moat. While Zhuowen was causing havoc in the Jinyu army, the cultivators in the Ryuka Valley who had been paying attention to the Jinyu army were stunned and petrified. Master's original body is back. What a powerful aura, we are saved this time. In the main hall of Ryuka, Green Hat, who had been recuperating, suddenly opened his eyes and exclaimed excitedly, "What? Brother Zhuo's original body is back." Crepe Myrtle Star, who was sitting not far away, also came back to his senses. He was stunned at first, but then he became excited. "Mother, Father's original body is back? You have always talked about how strong Father's original body is, but is it really a match for the Jinyu Divine Master?" Zhuojun and was puzzled. When he was very young, Zhuowen's original body had left Ryuka, and no one knew where it had gone. Although Zhuojun and had often heard others say that Zhuowen's strongest body was his human original body, he had never seen it before. But he had never seen it before, and the impact that Divine Lord Golden Corner gave him was too great. Therefore he had some doubts. Could Zhua Wen's original body really be a match for Divine Lord Golden Corner? All these years, the ones who have been with us are only Master's doppelgangers. The doppelganger's strength is only 1% of the original body's strength. Little Master, do you think Master's original body is powerful? This time, the Jinyu Divine Master and the 3 Pure Ones are in trouble. With Master's original body strength, he can definitely suppress the 2 of them. Now it's time for us to make a move. Green Hat grinned. Ever since he had been beaten to a pulp by the 3 Pure Ones, he had been holding back a lot of anger, and now he could finally vent it. Brother Green Hat, your injuries haven't healed yet, right? It's not very appropriate to go out now. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign said with a frown. Brother Ziwei, you're much stronger than I am now. Are you still so fearful in your actions? In the Ryuka Valley, other than the 3 Pure Ones, no one is our match. Even if I'm injured, those 3 foreign patriarchs won't be a match for me. Green Hat laughed heartily. Ziwei Star Monarch was stunned, then he shook his head and laughed. You're right, I'm too conservative. Let's go, I'll go with you. Let's have a good time in the valley. Those old followers of the 3 Pure Ones actually dared to attack Ryuka. It's time to teach them a lesson. With that said, Green Hat and Crepe Myrtle Star walked out of the main hall side by side. Mother, grandfather, grandmother. Let's go out and take a look. I really want to see how strong Father's original body is. Yuejun, and said excitedly. Mu Qinshue's beautiful eyes were a little stern. Now was a critical time. She couldn't let anything happen to Jun and Qinshui. Let's go out. Didn't you receive Wenner's message as well? He said that there's no need to fear the Jinyu army, so there's definitely no problem. He has never let us down once. Feng Xiao suddenly opened her mouth. Mu Qinshui was stunned, then she said with a bitter smile, Granny is right, I was too worried. I believe in husband. Let's follow behind Green Hat and Crepe Myrtle. When Green Hat and Ziwei Star Monarch walked out of the main hall, they decisively made their move. Those who surrendered were mercilessly killed by the 2 of them. After that, the 2 of them fought the 3 foreign patriarchs. In front of everyone's eyes, they killed the 3 patriarchs and rescued the trapped Ryuka people. As for the rest of the surrendered troops, their morale fell into chaos. They gave up resisting and were imprisoned by the Ryuka people. The Black King, Lian Meng, Du Huacan, and the other humans who had a good relationship with Zhuan were also released along with the Ryuka people. What happened? Where's the 3 patriarchs? After the Black King was released, he immediately asked Green Hat. The 3 patriarchs brought my master and went to the Jinyu army's camp alone. Green Hat lightly said. What? He actually dares to do this? No, we have to save little brother Zhua, otherwise she'll really die. The Black King anxiously said. Green Hat laughed and pulled the Black King back. He pointed into the distance and said, You'll know if you look at the Jinyu army. They don't need our help at all. The Black King was stunned. He looked in the direction Green Hat was pointing and was surprised to find that there was a terrifying explosion in the Jinyu army's camp. Countless energy cannons fell from the sky and exploded in the Jinyu army's camp, causing waves of terrifying explosion energy. He could even see the scene of many Golden Corner soldiers being blown to smithereens, and the entire military camp was in a mess, with people fleeing and hiding. But most people couldn't hide at all. The range of the explosion was too large, and it filled the entire camp. Under such an explosion, the entire camp became hell on earth. Large numbers of Jinyu soldiers were annihilated in the explosion. What? Who did this? So powerful. The Black King was stunned and his scalp went numb. Even from so far away, he could feel how terrifying the power of the explosion was. If he was in that purgatory, he probably wouldn't be able to hold on for more than 10 breaths of time before his soul dissipated. But is this the work of Father? So powerful. Just one person taking action, and he got rid of such a powerful Jinyu army? Zhuejun and had already come out. He climbed up the cliff at the edge of the valley and looked at the explosion in the distance. His face was flushed with excitement. It seems to be the Jinyu Divine Lord. That Jinyu Divine Lord was wrapped in a green flame and seems to have been burned away. Zhuojun An's eyesight was very strong. He saw the Jinyu Divine Lord wrapped in green lotus flames in the sky above the explosion. At Zhuojun An's reminder, everyone in the valley also noticed the Jinyu Divine Lord in the sky in the distance. They saw with their own eyes that the Jinyu Divine Lord was burned to ashes by the green lotus flames. That's Father's soul sword intent. This green flame is too familiar, but it's much stronger than the soul sword intent that Father released in the past. Zhuojun then muttered to himself. That's the strength of Master's original body. So what if the Jinyu Divine Lord has a heaven-breaking level 3 divine artifact? He's no match for Master, Green Hat said enthusiastically. Chapter 3673. In the depths of heaven's moat, the base of the mechanical lifeforms had long been reduced to ruins. All the mechanical lifeforms in the base had perished, and the place was in ruins. A white light shone from the ruins, and then a human figure gradually became clear in the white light. It was a black-robed metallic life form, and it was the Master God of Golden Galaxy. At this moment, the Master God's face was extremely ugly, and his eyes were filled with fear. Are you kidding me? The God Master died just like that? How is this possible? How strong is that guy? The Master God was a little dazed as he mumbled to himself, but his body was trembling. He had watched the entire battle between the God Master of Golden Galaxy and Jun. Rather than calling it a battle, it was actually a one-sided abuse. The God Master of Golden Galaxy, who had the Snake Shadow Staff, could not resist at all. It was too unbelievable. No, it's too dangerous here. I have to run. The Master God came back to his senses and rushed out of Heaven's Moat, entering the chaotic stars outside. After leaving Heaven's Moat, the Master God took out his flying divine artifact and flew toward the group of meteorites where the teleportation formation was set up in advance. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. The God Master has perished, and Lord Gong and Lord Ni seem to have perished too. What should I do next? Golden Galaxy is almost at its limit. The Master God smiled bitterly. He knew that this invasion was a complete failure. Golden Galaxy was completely defeated. He was also a little lost, and he did not know what to do next. He estimated that Golden Galaxy would not last for 1,000 years. After 1,000 years, Golden Galaxy would be at the end of its road. Damn it, why did it become like this? We planned this for so many years, and the plan was flawless. The Master God slammed his fist on the deck and roared unwillingly. No, there's still hope. Suddenly, the Master God calmed down and took out a palm-sized statue from his spirit ring. This statue had a human face and a snake body, and it was similar to Gong Ji Lu and Nic. Lady Ni gave this to me. She said that this is the communicator that the Niwa clan uses to communicate with each other. We used this communicator to contact Lady Ni and Lord Gong. Furthermore, Lord Ni had also said that this communication device could also send out a distress signal from the clan. As long as there are clansmen nearby, they will quickly rush over. The great God Master held the statue in his hand, and his eyes were filled with determination. Nic had told him that there was a limit to the range of the signal that the statue could send out, and the probability of there being a clansman in this limited range was very small. Gongji Lu and Nic had never paid much attention to this function of the communicator because they knew that although the clan members seemed to be very well off on the surface, the internal competition was very intense. If they were in a life or death crisis, even if they used this function to summon their people, it would have the opposite effect. Therefore, they never thought of using this function on the communicator. However, the great God Master naturally didn't know about the relationships between the clan disciples. Now, he was completely filled with anger and unwillingness. He knew that the Golden Corner Starry Sky was finished, but he was unwilling to accept it. Even if the Golden Corner Starry Sky was going to be destroyed, he didn't want the Wanderer Starry Sky to have an easy time. Especially the evil youth who killed the Golden Corner Divine Lord. He had a premonition that the youth would notice that he had left and would probably chase after him. If he was lucky, he could really summon the other clansmen of the Niwa clan. Even if he couldn't deal with the entire Wanderer's starry sky, killing the evil youth would be enough to vent his anger. Bang! At this moment, the flying divine artifact that the great Godmaster was sitting on suddenly exploded. The entire flying divine artifact shook violently, and countless cracks appeared on its surface. The great Godmaster's expression changed drastically. He immediately looked behind him and saw that at the edge of the heavenly moat, a figure was rapidly chasing after him. Fierce attacks were launched from this person's hands and landed on the flying divine artifact. The figure chasing after him was Jean. Damn it, how is this guy so fast? The great Godmaster's expression changed drastically. His gaze became even more determined, and then he injected energy into the statue in his hand. The originally dim statue was now bursting with a strange purple light. Then, the great Godmaster's sharp senses discovered that a strange ripple swept out in all directions like radiation. It was so fast that he couldn't react in time. What's with this ripple? Zhuo Wen, who was originally chasing from behind, also felt that fleeting fluctuation and was extremely shocked in his heart. However, Wen didn't think too much about it. He didn't intend to let the great Godmaster go. After all, this guy was one of the main forces in the invasion of the Wanderer's starry sky. How could he let such a guy go so easily? The invisible ripple was too fast. In just a breath, it had spread to most of the primordial tree. However, it was very difficult for the beings of the lower realms in these areas to sense the ripple, unless they were top-notch powerhouses with very sensitive divine senses. Of course, they could only sense the ripple, but they didn't know what it meant or where it was coming from. On a huge branch near the top of the primordial tree, a figure stood quietly. Upon closer inspection, this figure had the face of a middle-aged man, but his lower body was that of a snake. However, this person wasn't afraid of the primordial tree's terrifying aura. He stood calmly on the branch and looked around as if he was looking for something. This is so troublesome. Why did you leave the tracking to me? I've chased him from the 100 territories to the primordial tree. I've unknowingly chased him for so long. That guy's ability to escape is really strong. He's only at the heaven-crushing 7 transformation, but he's actually faster than me. That's really impressive. However, this is as far as I can go. The 100 territories have already been sealed off. This guy can't go back to the 100 territories. I've also set up corresponding informants in most areas of the primordial tree. As long as that guy appears on the informants, I'll immediately discover him. The only place I haven't checked should be the area at the bottom of the primordial tree. I'll find you soon. You made me run so far. I'll definitely torture you before killing you. A cruel smile appeared on the middle-aged man's face as his gaze fell on the area at the bottom of the primordial tree. This ripple? Isn't this the clan's communication device's distress signal? Looks like one of our clansmen is in danger? The middle-aged man was startled at first, but then he shrugged. He didn't want to pay attention to this distress signal. In the past, when he was out on missions, he often encountered this kind of situation. Although they were from the same clan, that was all. He never paid attention to this kind of distress signal. To him, saving people was a waste of time. In his opinion, sending out distress signals was the behavior of weaklings. He was even less interested in weaklings. Chapter 3674. Let's go and take a look. Maybe it's that guy who attacked my clansmen. After all, that guy hates our Nuwa clan very much. If there are any clansmen here, I'm afraid he won't be able to hold himself back and attack us. As he spoke, the middle-aged man grinned and gradually disappeared. Bang! The flying divine artifact completely exploded. The Grand God Master groaned and flew backward, smashing into the surface of a meteorite. However, the Grand God Master reacted quickly. The moment he fell to the ground, he immediately took out array flags from his spiritual ring and threw them around him, forming a powerful defensive array. He had already set up this array long ago. Now, he was just using it. However, what made the Grand God Master despair was that the array collapsed just as it was set up. Grand God Master, Don't waste your time. My array skills are higher than yours. The array you set up has no effect on me at all. An indifferent voice sounded. Zhuan, who was disguised as an evil youth, slowly walked out. The Grand God Master showed a look of despair. He knew that he could not escape death today. As for the distress signal he had sent out, it had been a while, but no one had come. Obviously, there were no clansmen of the Nuwa clan within the range of the signal. What will it take for you to let me go? The Grand God Master suddenly asked. Zhuan shook his head and said, You are one of the masterminds who plan to invade the Pan-Yu galaxy. You are too dangerous. You may launch another invasion in the future. Therefore, I can spare others' lives if they surrender, but not you. As he spoke, Zhuan lifted the Grand God Master up with one hand. His left hand formed a sword and pointed at the Grand God Master's forehead. The gap between the Grand God Master and Zhuan was too big. In the hands of Zhuan, the Grand God Master could not do anything. Suddenly, a strong sense of danger rose in Zhuan's mind. He immediately shook off the Grand God Master and quickly retreated. Puchi! A blade light appeared at the place where Zhuan was and cut off Zhuan's right arm. Zhuan landed on the edge of the meteor. After stopping the bleeding from the wound on his right arm, he looked at the starry sky behind the great priest with fear in his eyes. The blade light from earlier had suddenly appeared in the starry sky. Furthermore, it had struck towards the center of his brows from an extremely tricky angle. If he hadn't reacted fast enough, that blade light would have split his head open. Who is it? Zhuan bellowed. Aya, you're just an ant, but your reaction is quite fast. You actually dodged my casual attack. A lazy voice sounded. A black whirlpool appeared behind the Great God Master. The whirlpool continued to emit black lightning. A middle-aged man slowly walked out of the vortex. When Zhuan saw this figure, his pupils shrank. This was because this middle-aged man actually had the face of a human and the body of a snake. He was also a member of the Nuwa clan. What made Zhuan's heart sink even more was that he could not see through this person's cultivation at all. Moreover, this person gave him a very dangerous feeling. He could even smell the aura of death. This Nuwa clan member in front of him was much stronger than him. My lord, you really came. I really didn't expect you to really come. The Great God Master was very excited. He immediately got up and went to the middle-aged man's side. Who the hell are you? Aren't you a member of the Nuwa clan? Did you send that distress signal? The middle-aged man squinted his eyes and carefully sized up the Great God Master. He noticed the Nuwa statue in the Great God Master's hand. Yes, it was me. I'm a subordinate of Lord Gongji Lu and Lord Nic. The Great God Master quickly said. Although he did not know the exact cultivation of this middle-aged man in front of him, from the terrifying aura emanating from this person, he knew that this person was definitely stronger than Gongji Lu and Nic. Oh, you're one of the more outstanding juniors in the clan. I think I've heard of you before. But right where are they? The middle-aged man asked casually. They're dead. They were killed by this person. My lord, you have to avenge them. The Great God Master pointed at Zhuan with an emotional expression. You're lying, right? What cultivation does this ant have? How can he kill Gongji Lu and Nic? The middle-aged man coldly looked at the Great God Master. Plop. The Great God Master was so scared that he quickly knelt on the ground and said, My lord, I wouldn't dare lie to you. Lord Gong and Lord Ni were really killed by this person. Although this person's cultivation isn't very high, his spirit has already broken through the heavens. Moreover, there's shattered divine power in his body. He's much more powerful than ordinary fifth blight cultivators. The middle-aged man's eyes lit up, and he began to look at Zhuan with interest. He hasn't broken through the heavens, but he already has shattered divine power and heaven-breaking divine sense? I really didn't expect that such a freak would appear in the lower realms. The middle-aged man walked toward Zhuan with large strides. He did not take any precautions. He did not take Zhuan seriously and was only interested in him. Zhuan's expression was grave. He knew that the middle-aged man in front of him was a powerful enemy. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In an instant he blasted out 10 divine sense sword intents. The divine sense sword intense wrapped in azure lotus flames pierced through the void and bombarded the middle-aged man. Meanwhile, Zhuan did not even think about it. He summoned his divine ship and flew toward the galaxy. He knew that as long as he entered the galaxy, he would have a chance of survival. However, not long after Zhuan flew out, a blade of light instantly blasted over and shattered the divine ship. Meanwhile, Zhuan grunted and fell back, his face pale and bloodless. At the same time, not far away, the middle-aged man who had been attacked by the 10 divine sense sword intense was completely unscathed. "Aunt, are you trying to tickle me?" The middle-aged man's eyes were calm. However, if one looked closely, they would be able to see the surprise in the depths of his eyes. This was because he had indeed felt the power of the heaven-breaking 3 transformations in the divine sense sword intense. In other words, this person's cultivation had not yet broken through the heavens, but his spirit had already reached the heaven-breaking 3 transformations. What kind of freak was this? Looks like this ant is hiding some secrets on him. Since it's like this, then I won't kill him. I'll capture him alive. The middle-aged man shrugged. He suddenly stomped his right foot and instantly teleported in front of Zhuan before smashing his fist onto Zhuan's body. Puchi! Zhuan's chest was directly shattered. He spat out a mouthful of blood as his entire body flew out, smashing all the meteors along the way into pieces. So strong. Seeing Zhuan being beaten so miserably, the Divine Master revealed a pleased expression. At the same time, he was filled with reverence towards the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man walked slowly toward Zhuan and said indifferently, "The gap between us is too great. Be my captive obediently. Perhaps you can even keep your life." Chapter 3675. At the last moment, Zhuan used the seal of joy from the 7 emotions tablet imprint. This was Zhuan's most powerful technique at the moment. When the seal of joy was used, the middle-aged man's mind was indeed affected, and a strange smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Zhuan seized the opportunity and instantly blasted out streaks of godly soul sword essence. The terrifying green lotus fire exploded in the entire starry sky, dyeing the surrounding hundreds of millions of kilometers green. In one breath, Zhuan blasted out dozens of godly soul sword essences. After releasing these godly soul sword essences, he burned his essence blood and fled. The moment Zhuan fled, a divine sword that emitted a cold light swept over from the depths of the chaotic starry sky not far away. This divine sword was pure white, and the blade was sharp and sharp. The sword suddenly pierced into the green lotus fire that the middle-aged man was trapped in. In an instant, the divine sword slashed through hundreds of thousands of times. Within the explosion, there was the sound of flesh being torn apart, and then a mist of blood burst out from the explosion. Zhuan barely returned to the edge of the natural moat, and only then did his divine thought land outside the starry sky. He also noticed the sudden appearance of the pure white divine sword. "Duan Jipeng, you were indeed hiding nearby. How dare you sneak attack me? I want you dead." An angry roar came from the endless green lotus fire, and Zhuan felt a terrifying energy coming from the depths of the fire. Boom! The endless green lotus fire exploded, and a barbaric figure swept out from the countless sparks. It was the middle-aged man from the Nuwa clan. No way! How strong is this guy? Zhuan found that although the middle-aged man's body was covered in sword wounds, and blood was splattering everywhere, none of the injuries were caused by the green lotus fire. This meant that the main thing that injured him was the pure white divine sword that suddenly appeared. This fact made Zhuan feel uncomfortable, but he also knew that it was because the gap between him and the middle-aged man was too big. Fortunately, he had already escaped into the coiling starry sky. This middle-aged man could not enter the lower realm's starry sky unless he severed his cultivation or used a treasure to suppress his cultivation. The sword wounds on the middle-aged man's body were gradually recovering, but his gaze became cold and terrifying. The middle-aged man bellowed. His fists quickly slammed into an area of space. Because the space could not withstand his power, countless cracks began to appear. Kacha! When that part of the starry sky shattered, The elusive pure white divine sword suddenly shot out and pierced the middle-aged man's chest in an instant when he didn't notice. Bang! The middle-aged man's pupils constricted as he flew backwards. After smashing through numerous asteroids, he barely managed to stabilize himself. However, the divine sword in his chest had already pierced through his chest. It changed direction and landed in the shattered starry sky. Zhuan saw a young man slowly walking out of the shattered starry sky. This young man was very tall and had long hair that reached his waist. His face was fair and firm, and he was very handsome. This young man should be the Duan Jipeng that the middle-aged man spoke of. Zhuan's gaze was solemn. He also felt the terrifying aura on this young man. This was also an elite that far surpassed him. What on earth happened? Why would two high-level shattering heaven-tier elites appear near the lower realm's starry sky? Zhuan's heart sank. These two people who had just appeared, no matter who it was, could easily kill him, and he actually encountered both of them. Fortunately, these two people looked to be enemies. This could be considered a blessing in disguise. At the same time, Yuan noticed that the great god Tier Master was lying on a shattered asteroid in the distance. His body was shattered, and there was not a single part of him that was intact. This unlucky guy should have been too close to the battle just now and was affected by the aftermath of the battle, causing him to be severely injured. It could be seen that the great god Tier Master was not far from death. "Ha, Duan Jipeng, you're really good. You actually dared to sneak attack me. Do you believe that I won't kill you?" The middle-aged man slowly got up, his gaze fierce as he glared at the young man in the distance. "Supremacy Hong Rui. I originally planned to keep hiding. Unfortunately, that little guy created an opportunity for me. This kind of opportunity is very rare, so I naturally won't let it go." As he spoke, Duan Jipeng glanced at Zhuan, who was at the edge of the natural moat, and continued, "Those few attacks just now must have affected you greatly, right? With your current strength, you really can't take me down. In fact, you might even be taken down by me." Supremacy Hong Rui gritted his teeth and glared fiercely at Zhuan. Duan Jipeng was right. He had been too careless when he attacked Zhuan, and his mind had been disturbed by the 7 emotion steel seal, thus allowing Duan Jipeng to find a huge flaw. Although his injuries were rapidly recovering, his internal injuries were very serious, and they were not so easy to heal. Moreover, these internal injuries had already begun to affect his strength. "Humph! Duan Jipeng, after killing you, I'll properly entertain that ant and his starry sky. For now, you'd better worry about your own safety first." Supremacy Hong Rui snorted coldly. He clenched his fists, and a pair of golden gloves appeared on the surface of his fists. Duan Jipeng narrowed his eyes, but he was not afraid. He held the pure white divine sword in his right hand and began to fight with Supremacy Hong Rui. The commotion caused by the battle between the two was too terrifying. Waves of terrifying energy spread out, and they could easily tear apart the chaotic starry sky. Moreover, when the aftershocks of the battle reached spiraling starry sky, they caused violent fluctuations on the surface of spiraling starry sky. The vast spiraling starry sky began to tremble, and the starry sky in some areas began to distort, becoming a strange black hole that swallowed everything. Damn it, the commotion caused by the battle between the two of them is too great. Zhuan's face was solemn. He took out several array flags and began to scatter the large arrays that he had set up earlier. He combined them into a complex and powerful combination array. The combination array covered a large area, and it actually covered most of the spiraling starry sky. Although the combination array's power was only at the first level of breaking through the heavens. However, Duan Jipeng and Supremacy Hong Rui were fighting far away. Hence, the combination array was barely able to block the aftershocks of the battle between the two of them. After setting up the combination array, he set up many surveillance arrays in the surroundings to observe the battle between Supremacy Hong Rui and Duan Jipeng. He could sense that the battle between the two of them was definitely because of something extraordinary. Otherwise, why would such powerful beings come to the primordial Hongmeng tree, and from the looks of it, one of them was fleeing while the other was chasing? After doing all this, Zhuan returned to the Ryuka Valley and his appearance returned to normal. Master Zhuo is back. After returning to the Ryuka Valley, a group of people immediately surrounded him, and they all asked about his master. Other than Mu Chenxue and a few others who were closest to Zhuon, no one else knew that it was his original body that had returned to defeat the Jinyu army. However, Zhuon did not tell them the truth. He only said that it was his master's credit. He knew that he would definitely leave spiraling starry sky in the future. If he could fabricate a powerful master, no one would dare to covet Ryuka in the future, and no one would dare to lay their hands on Ryuka. This was definitely a good thing for Ryuka. Chapter 3676. Zhuon, I am truly sorry. I was also in favor of surrendering from the start. If you want to kill me, I will not have any objections. The Black King lowered his head in shame as he walked over with Lian Meng. Zhuon waved his hand and smiled. Black King, Lian Meng, it's not your fault. Moreover, I have to thank you. In the end, you risked your life to plead for mercy for me. I owe you a favor and let this matter pass. Zhuon knew that the Black King, Lian Meng, and the rest were mostly coerced by the three Pure Ones. After all, the three Pure Ones were the strongest at that time and no one could resist him. Therefore, he didn't blame them. After all, they had no choice. Thank you. The Black King, Lian Meng, and the rest looked at each other and knelt down to express their gratitude to Zhuon. Bang bang bang. Suddenly, the entire starry sky trembled violently. Dense ripples appeared in the surrounding starry sky, as if something was shaking the starry sky. This? What happened? Everyone's expression changed. There are experts fighting nearby. Don't go near the edge of the starry sky. Zhuon's expression was solemn as he briefly explained what had happened in the outside world. Finally, he gave everyone some instructions before heading to the heavenly moat. Zhuon noticed that the battle between Honorable Hongrui and Duan Jipeng had started to move away from the starry sky. This made him heave a sigh of relief. It seems like it's because of Duan Jipeng. Zhuon quickly thought of the young man with the white divine sword. With Honorable Hongrui's hatred for him, he would definitely want to fight near the heavenly moat. But now, the battle was moving away from the heavenly moat. This was obviously because Duan Jipeng was helping him. Is he thanking me for exposing Honorable Hongrui's weakness? Zhuon muttered to himself. Zhuon sat at the edge of the heavenly moat. His powerful divine consciousness started to radiate into the distance. In his divine consciousness, he saw other lower realm starry skies. These lower realm starry skies hung on the branches of the primordial chaos tree like ripe fruits. After passing through many lower realms, Zhuowen's spiritual will stopped on a branch. On the branch, Venerable Hongrui and Duan Jipeng were engaged in an intense battle. Terrifying ripples of their battles spread out continuously. Through Zhuo Wen's divine consciousness, he could clearly sense that Duan Jipeng seemed to be at a disadvantage. Based on their auras, one could tell that Duan Jipeng's cultivation was slightly lower than Honorable Hongrui's. Duan Jipeng, your cultivation base is one level lower than mine. You've only reached the God Domain transformation stage of the heaven-crushing 7 transformations. Your divine domain can't affect me at all. I advise you to surrender immediately if you don't want to die. Venerable Hongrui's body was covered with deep sword wounds, but he didn't seem to care at all. Instead, he stared coldly at Duan Jipeng. At this moment, Duan Jipeng's face was pale, and his breathing was somewhat rapid. Venerable Hongrui was right. There was indeed a gap between their realms. Although Duan Jipeng had reached the pinnacle of the God Domain transformation stage and was only half a step away from reaching the Celestial Demon transformation stage, Venerable Hongrui was only at the early stage of the Celestial Demon transformation stage. However, this small difference in their strength was like heaven and earth. If Duan Jipeng hadn't managed to injure Venerable Hongrui with his first move, he would have been defeated even faster. Seeing that Duan Jipeng didn't say a word, Venerable Hongrui didn't mind. He continued, "You deliberately led me to the starry sky of that ant, didn't you? I didn't expect you to have such a useless heart of pity. How boring. However, I'm not going to play with you anymore. This time, I'm going to be serious. Even if I end up with a corpse, I'll bring you back. After all, You have that kind of secret on you. Ha. Venerable Hong Rui laughed heartily and strode toward Duan Jipeng. Moreover, with every step he took, his body grew taller by 1 foot. His aura was also growing stronger. Today, I'll show you the true power of the celestial demon transformation stage. Venerable Hong Rui's sonorous voice came from the sky. As he walked, his body grew to a height of several thousand feet. Moreover, his body continued to grow taller. Is this the essence of the celestial demon transformation stage? The celestial demon transformation? Duan Jipeng's face was pale. Looking at Venerable Hong Rui, who had grown to a height of 10,000 feet, Duan Jipeng kept retreating. The celestial demon transformation stage Venerable Hong Rui was much stronger than before. Duan Jipeng was afraid that he wouldn't be able to take even one hit from Venerable Hong Rui. Sword Dominion expand. A sword-shaped mark appeared between Duan Jipeng's eyebrows. Soon after, countless sword lights appeared around him, forming a world and a territory. Divine Dominion was a power unique to the celestial demon transformation stage Venerable Hong Rui. The divine dominion it possessed was extremely powerful. Moreover, it had a terrifying destructive power. After the sword dominion was formed, Venerable Hong Rui stepped into it. Clang clang clang. However, what made Duan Jipeng's face turn gloomy was that the countless sword lights in the sword dominion only managed to break through Venerable Hong Rui's skin. Do I have to use that trump card in the end? Venerable Hong Rui gripped his divine sword tightly. As he kept retreating, his gaze turned solemn. Too weak. Duan Jipeng, is this all that your sword dominion is capable of? It's even weaker than my heavy dominion. How disappointing. Venerable Hong Rui strode toward Duan Jipeng. He wasn't hindered by the sword dominion at all. Sword dominion, explode. Duan Jipeng grabbed at the void with his right hand. Venerable Hong Rui, who was in the sword dominion, was shocked. Soon after, the surrounding domain began to collapse with a loud rumble. Countless sword lights exploded like powerful explosions. Venerable Hong Rui didn't expect Duan Jipeng to have the guts to explode his own divine dominion. The divine dominion was the core power of a celestial demon transformation stage Venerable Hong Rui. Once the divine dominion exploded, not only would the cultivator be severely injured, but his cultivation level would also drop. In the future, he wouldn't have the chance to condense his divine dominion again. He would never be able to reach the celestial demon transformation stage Venerable Hong Rui. His future cultivation journey would come to an end. The explosion of the sword dominion was indeed terrifying. Venerable Hong Rui's huge body was blown apart. Blood splattered everywhere. In the end, Venerable Hong Rui was only left with his huge head. Moreover, the head was also being crushed by the explosion. However, just as his head was about to shatter, a black lotus bloomed above Venerable Hong Rui's head. Then his head disappeared. In its place, the black lotus was shattered by the power of the divine dominion. Replacing the black lotus? Duan Jipeng's expression changed. He didn't expect Venerable Hong Rui to have such a treasure. At the most critical moment, the black lotus had saved his life. The flesh and blood beneath Venerable Hong Rui's head began to regenerate. He looked at Duan Jipeng with a cold gaze. Duan Jipeng, I didn't expect you to be so ruthless. How dare you use such a suicidal method? However, you've reached your limit. When I recover, it'll be your death. Venerable Hong Rui snorted. Chapter 3677. Looks like I'm really done for this time. Duan Jipeng looked at Honorable Hong Rui's head, which had been smashed into smithereens. His mouth was filled with bitterness. He knew that as long as Honorable Hong Rui recovered his upper body, he would be able to kill him. I can't accept this. I was so close to killing Honorable Hong Rui. If I still had the strength, I could have used this opportunity to send Honorable Hong Rui to hell. Duan Jipeng was unwilling to accept this outcome. Honorable Hong Rui's head was slowly recovering and his neck was growing back. However, Honorable Hong Rui's face was pale. It was obvious that he had suffered serious injuries. It was strenuous for him to recover from his injuries. Suddenly, a sword essence, which was burning with the green lotus flame, flew over and hit Honorable Hongrue's head. A bloody hole appeared on his recovered head. Honorable Hongrue roared in anger. His head rolled a few rounds in the starry sky and smashed onto a meteorite. Only then did he realize that the young man he had chased had appeared on a branch of the primordial Hong tree not too far away. "It's you ant?" Honorable Hongrue's eyes narrowed. The young man who had appeared on the branch of the primordial Hong tree was Jun. Zhuowen's mind had been observing the battle between the two of them. He was in awe. The battle between the two of them was too terrifying. It was beyond his comprehension. Whether it was Honorable Hongrue's godly demonization or Duan Jipeng's sword divine territory, they could easily kill him. In the end, he saw that both of them were severely injured. He knew that he could no longer ignore the battle. Although he did not know Duan Jipeng, he could tell that Duan Jipeng was a man of principles from how Duan Jipeng had deliberately lured Honorable Hongrue out of the starry sky. He owed Duan Jipeng a favor. Hence, he decided to help Duan Jipeng. Bang, bang, bang. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. He did not give Honorable Hongrue any chance to catch his breath. Streaks of sword essence of the godly soul blasted toward him. The terrifying sword essence blasted across the sky and exploded on Honorable Hongrue's head. A huge green lotus flame slowly bloomed in the sky. Honorable Hongrue's shrill cry came from the huge green lotus flame. "It should be over." Zhuan heaved a sigh of relief and came to Duan Jipeng's side. He asked in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist, are you all right?" But Duan Jipeng's expression changed drastically, and he said anxiously, "Quick! Pick up my divine sword. Venerable Hongrue won't die so easily. But my divine sword can kill him." Zhuan was stunned while a feeling of danger suddenly arose in his mind. After that, he didn't even hesitate to raise the pure white sword by Duan Jipeng's side and use it to block before him. Boom, boom. Streaks of terrifying energy landed in front of Zhuan and slammed into the divine sword, exploding into countless sparks. Zhuan let out a muffled groan and flew backward, spitting out a mouthful of blood. "Despicable ant, I'm going to kill you, kill you." Not far away, a meteorite exploded. Venerable Hongrue's head flew out of the meteorite and charged toward Zhuan. At that moment, Venerable Hongrue's head was in a terrible state. It was badly mutilated and no one could see his original face. It was too horrible to look at. However, Zhuan could feel the terrifying aura that was erupting from Venerable Hongrue's head. He could see that the aura was burning like a raging fire, and his aura was increasing rapidly. "Fellow Taoist, be careful. Venerable Hongrue is burning his blood essence." Duan Jipeng hurriedly reminded Zhuan. Zhuan barely managed to stabilize himself. He looked at Venerable Hongrue, who was charging toward him rapidly, and his eyes were solemn. However, he didn't run away. Instead, he faced Venerable Hongrue directly. At the same time, he secretly took out a formation flag from the macro world. Bang! Venerable Hongrue's head was too fast. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in front of Zhuan. Zhuan could only use Duan Jipeng's divine sword to block the attack. He wasn't familiar with Duan Jipeng's divine sword. Although he knew that the divine sword was powerful, he didn't know how to use it. He could only use it as a defensive tool. "Ant, you're dead meat. How dare you sneak an attack on me? I'll make sure you die a horrible death." Venerable Hongrue was furious. He didn't hesitate to burn his blood essence to kill Zhuan. "It's over. He can't stop Venerable Hongrue." Duan Jipeng smiled bitterly. He knew that Zhuan was dead meat. Although Zhuan was holding his divine sword, he couldn't hold on for long. Although Venerable Hongrue was severely injured, he was burning his blood essence now. His strength would become even more terrifying. Venerable Hongrue's attack landed on the divine sword. A terrifying force spread out. Zhuowen's right hand, which was holding the divine sword, exploded and the divine sword flew out of his hand. "Oh no!" Duan Jipeng's face changed when he saw this. Without the protection of the divine sword, Zhuan couldn't withstand a single blow from Venerable Hongrue. He was dead meat. "Ant, go to hell." Venerable Hongrue laughed maniacally. He appeared above Zhuowen as if he had teleported. His huge head opened his mouth and was about to bite down on Jun. He wanted to tear Zhuowen into pieces. Zhuowen's eyes were calm. With his remaining left hand, he took out the formation flag that he had prepared earlier. Instantly, with him as the center, countless formation runes appeared within a radius of 10 meters. They rotated around him like a hurricane. Blazing white light instantly engulfed Zhuowen and Venerable Hong Rui. What? A teleportation formation? Is he trying to? Duan Jipeng thought of something and his eyes turned serious. Venerable Hong Rui didn't think too much. He laughed and said, "Aunt, I thought you were going to kill me with other killing formations. I didn't expect it to be just a teleportation formation. You're too naive. No matter where you're teleported to, you're going to die. There's no way I'll let you go." However, Venerable Hong Rui's face changed as soon as he finished speaking. A terrifying rule power came crashing down, suppressing his head. He couldn't move at all, let alone attack Zhuowen. This is the lower realm? Venerable Hong Rui stared at Zhuowen in shock. However, before Venerable Hong Rui could finish his sentence, the restrictive power of the starry sky in the lower realm poured into his Tianling acupoint like rain. The power was too terrifying. Venerable Hong Rui was seriously injured. In the end, he screamed in pain. His head swelled and exploded, turning into blood foam. On the other hand, Zhuowen had long since left this place, so he was not affected by this explosion. He had long planned to teleport Supremacy Hong Rui to the coiling starry sky, which was the depths of Heavenly Chasm. He knew very well that since non-native heaven-breaking realm elites couldn't enter the lower realm, they would suffer a backlash unless they suppressed their cultivation level. After all, Venerable Hong Rui was an elite in the celestial demon transformation realm. Even if he was seriously injured and only his head was left, Zhuowen was still no match for him. As the saying went, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Hence, Zhuowen had planned to kill Venerable Hong Rui using this method. His plan didn't disappoint him. Venerable Hong Rui was easily killed by him. The moment Venerable Hong Rui's head exploded, his spirit flew out from the top of his head toward the heavenly moat. However, when Venerable Hong Rui's spirit reached the border of the heavenly moat, it was immediately blocked by the formation. Chapter 3678. Yun half knelt on the ground, cold sweat trickling down his forehead. His gaze was solemn. Honorable Hong Rui was really difficult to deal with. It took him so much effort to finally deal with him. Moreover, Honorable Hong Rui was severely injured and had less than 1% of his strength left. If he was not injured, he could have killed Zhuowen with a flip of his hand. Zhuowen sat cross-legged on the ground. After swallowing a few healing elixirs and waiting for his shattered right arm to heal, he slowly stood up. He checked the spot where Honorable Hong Rui's head had exploded. He wanted to see if his spiritual ring was still there. However, to Zhuowen's disappointment, he did not find the spiritual ring. He guessed that Honorable Hong Rui's spiritual ring should have been crushed together with his body by Duan Jipeng's sword dominion. Zhuowen felt that it was a pity. He flew out of the natural moat and arrived at the branch where Duan Jipeng was. He picked up the white divine sword and threw it to Duan Jipeng, who was still lying on the ground. "You're not dead?" Duan Jipeng stared blankly at Zhuowen, who appeared in front of him, unharmed. Although Honorable Hong Rui had been severely injured and his strength had decreased greatly, the little guy in front of him had not broken through the heavens. He should not be a match for Honorable Hong Rui. However, the little guy appeared in front of him in one piece. Honorable Hong Rui, on the other hand, was nowhere to be seen. As long as one was not a fool, one could tell that Honorable Hong Rui was most likely dead. "You killed Honorable Hong Rui?" Duan Jipeng asked cautiously. I've already dealt with Venerable Hong Rui. Fellow Taoist, take this first." Zhuowen threw a healing elixir to Honorable Hong Rui. He could tell that Duan Jipeng's injuries were severe. If he did not take the healing elixir, it would be difficult for him to recover. Duan Jipeng took the healing elixir from Zhuowen in a daze. He was so shocked that his mouth formed an O shape. "Fellow Taoist, this healing pill of yours is completely useless to me." After coming back to his senses, Duan Jipeng shook his head and returned the healing divine pellet to Zhuan. Then he took out a green divine pellet from his spirit ring. The divine pill that Duan Jipeng took out was extremely rich in medicinal power. The medicinal power that flowed out condensed into a red-crowned crane that circled around Duan Jipeng and flapped its wings continuously. Zhuan's expression turned serious. The divine pill that Duan Jipeng had taken out was definitely a heaven-breaking divine pill. Furthermore, it was considered an extremely high-grade divine pill even among the heaven-breaking divine pills. This is a level 6 heaven-breaking divine pill, the Heavenly Spirit Blood Fusion Immortal Pill. It can be considered a good healing divine pill. This thing is very precious in the 100 outer realms. When Duan Jipeng saw Zhuan's expression, he couldn't help but smile and explain. However, there was a pained look in his eyes. Clearly, a divine pill of this level was priceless. After swallowing the divine pill, Duan Jipeng's complexion was obviously much better, and his body was able to move again. Fellow Taoist, may I know your name? My name is Duan Jipeng. Thank you for saving my life this time. Duan Jipeng stood up and solemnly bowed to Zhuan. If not for Zhuan's help at the critical moment, he would have been dead by now. In his heart, saving his life was like giving him a new lease on life. Therefore, he treated Zhuan very seriously. My name is Zhuan. Fellow Taoist Duan, you don't have to be so polite. If we're talking about cultivation, I'll have to address you as senior, Zhuan said with a smile. However, Duan Jipeng shook his head. Fellow Taoist Zhua, don't say that. You're my benefactor. If you call me senior, wouldn't that be too much for me? By the way, fellow Taoist Duan, that supremacy Hongrui just now was from the Nuwa clan, right? If not for your sudden help, that supremacy Hongrui wouldn't have let me go. After all, his target was me, Zhuan said with a smile. However, Duan Jipeng shook his head and said, Fellow Taoist Zhua, to tell you the truth, supremacy Hongrui's main target was me. He chased me all the way from the 100 realms to the primordial chaos tree. Speaking of which, I'm the one who brought you trouble. Zhuan nodded. In truth, he had already guessed this, but he wasn't sure. At the same time, Zhuan was also a little excited. This Duan Jipeng came from the 100 realms, and his cultivation was also very strong. Most likely, he knew a lot about the power distribution of the 100 realms. Moreover, although Zhuan's divine sense had broken through to the heaven-crushing stage, he knew nothing about the heaven-crushing stage. He only knew that there were 9 changes to the heaven-crushing stage, but he didn't know the specific differences between the stages. Apart from the heaven-crushing stage, he also didn't know whether there were other stages above it. He could probably find out about this from Duan Jipeng. Fellow Taoist Zhua, if I'm not mistaken, your cultivation hasn't broken through to the heaven-crushing stage, right? Why aren't you affected by the chaotic galaxy's pressure at all? Duan Jipeng asked in surprise. One had to realize that the chaotic galaxy's pressure was extremely terrifying. Cultivators below the heaven-crushing stage shouldn't be able to withstand such terrifying pressure. Duan smiled slightly and said, I'm not sure either. Perhaps it has something to do with my divine sense being more powerful by nature. Duan Jipeng took a deep look at Zhuan. He knew that Zhuan didn't want to answer this question directly. After all, everyone had their own secrets, and he also had secrets that he didn't want to reveal to Zhuan. After that, Duan Jipeng sat on a tree branch and began to recuperate while chatting with Zhuan. After chatting for a while, the two of them became much more familiar with each other. Zhuan learned a lot about the 100 realms from Duan Jipeng. Zhuan also learned why Duan Jipeng was being hunted down by supremacy Hongrui of the Nuwa clan. Duan Jipeng was a prodigious itinerant cultivator from the Nuwa realm, and he was very famous in the Nuwa realm. The Nuwa clan had also extended an olive branch to Duan Jipeng many times, wanting to recruit him into the Nuwa clan and serve them. However, Duan Jipeng refused. Later on, Duan Jipeng fell in love with one of the granddaughters of the Nuwa clan's supremacy, Yun Fei. Originally, this was the best opportunity for the Nuwa clan to recruit Duan Jipeng, but the Nuwa clan strongly opposed their relationship. However, Duan Jipeng and Yun Fei were so in love that they couldn't distinguish between each other. In the end, the two of them secretly eloped and escaped from the 100 Realms. However, they didn't manage to escape far before they were intercepted by numerous experts of the Nuwa clan. Duan Jipeng originally thought that he was going to die, but he didn't expect that at the last moment, Yun Fei would sacrifice herself to save him. An extremely terrifying power erupted from her body and defeated all the experts of the Nuwa clan. However, Yun Fei also died because of this. Later on, Duan Jipeng learned that Yun Fei had an astral weapon fragment sealed in her body. In the future, Yun Fei would be sacrificed by the supremacy to take out the astral weapon fragment in her body and use it for himself. Yun Fei knew her fate long ago, and she had already accepted it. However, she met Duan Jipeng and fell in love with him. At the moment of certain death, she fulfilled Duan Jipeng's wish by sacrificing herself and transferring the astral weapon fragment into Duan Jipeng's body. Astral weapon? What's that? Zhuan asked in confusion. Duan Jipeng also knew that Zhuan was a living being from the lower realms, so it was understandable that he didn't know about astral weapons. Duan Jipeng pointed at a huge shining star far above the primordial chaos tree. The star was very big, but it was also very far away, giving off a strange feeling that it was difficult to approach. Chapter 3679. Back then, Yun had learned about the ancient star system from Ma Yujie, although it was only fragmentary information. However, he could still recognize at a glance that the mysterious star suspended above the primordial tree was the ancient star system that Ma Yujie had mentioned. Speaking of which, Ma Yujie seemed to have come from the ancient star system. However, Zhuan knew too little about the ancient star system, so he didn't know how extraordinary it was to come from the ancient star system. You actually know about the ancient star system? Duan Jipeng looked at Zhuan in surprise. Zhuan rubbed his nose and said, I've heard of the primeval star system from a cultivator, but this is the first time I've seen the true primeval star system. Duan Jipeng's interest was piqued and he said, There's actually someone in the lower realm who knows about the ancient star system? Could that person be a descender from the outer realm? Zhuan shook his head and said, He didn't come from the outer realm, but from the ancient star system. Duan Jipeng was stunned and immediately said with a serious expression, Fellow Taoist Zhua, are you joking? Zhuan was startled. He could see that Duan Jipeng's expression was a little strange. Fellow Taoist Duan, is there a problem? Back then, that cultivator told me personally. Zhuan thought of Ma Yujie's chubby figure. Speaking of which, Ma Yujie had always been extremely mysterious. Even now, he couldn't see through that guy's real situation. Moreover, ever since the invasion of the foreign race, Zhuan had seen Ma Yujie in the Door of Darkness, and there had been no news of Ma Yujie in all these years. Later, when Zhuan's strength reached the peak of this starry sky, he had actually asked Tai Ching, Demon Saint, and other almighty figures to look for Ma Yujie, but there was no news. Zhuan knew that Ma Yujie had most likely left the starry sky. He should be bragging. It can't be true. Duan Jipeng laughed and said indifferently, Fellow Taoist Duan, why are you so sure? Zhuan asked doubtfully. That's because the existences in the ancient star system are all supreme rulers, supreme experts. He's a true overlord who can stand shoulder to shoulder with this starry sky. This kind of overlord is extremely mysterious. They only live in the ancient star system and rarely leave. I remember that in the oldest records of the outer realms, there was an ancient overlord who came from the immemorial star system to the outer realms. The 100 regions are shaken, and all creatures are paying homage. No one dares to go against the archaic giants. There is only reverence in their hearts, Duan Jipeng said seriously. Zhuan opened his mouth slightly, feeling incredulous. He knew how strong the 100 domains were, but the 100 domains were all worshipping a mere magnate from the immemorial star galaxy. Wasn't this a little too exaggerated? I can tell you clearly that when the overlord from the ancient star system came to the 100 domains, the laws of the 100 domains became chaotic and disasters continued. That was because the overlord from the ancient star system was too terrifying. Just by standing in the 100 domains, the 100 domains couldn't withstand the aura of the overlord from the ancient star system. If the cultivator you're talking about really came from the ancient star system, your starry sky would have collapsed long ago. Duan Jipeng shook his head. He didn't believe that the cultivator from the ancient star system that Zhuan was talking about was real. I see, I understand. Zhuan nodded, but he couldn't help but think of Ma Yujie's serious expression when he talked about his origin. He could feel that Ma Yujie wasn't lying or joking at that time. However, according to Duan Jipeng, Ma Yujie couldn't be an overlord from the ancient star system. After all, Ma Yujie was too weak. It seems that this guy's true origin really needs to be explained by him. Zhuan shook his head. He didn't think too much about Ma Yujie. In his opinion, no matter how mysterious Ma Yujie's origin was, it didn't have much to do with him. His goal was to become stronger and firmly control his own fate in his own hands. Now, let me tell you about the astral soldier. The so-called astral soldier is a divine weapon or a fragment of a divine weapon that fell from the ancient star system. The astral soldier is a powerful divine weapon that surpasses the heaven breaker grade divine weapons. Even if it's just a fragment of an astral soldier, its power is comparable to a top heaven breaker grade divine weapon. In the 100 outer domains, the experts who truly stand at the peak actually have one or more complete sets of astral soldiers. When Duan Jipeng mentioned the astral soldier, his eyes were filled with sorrow. It was obvious that he was thinking of Yun Fei, who sacrificed herself for him. Yun glanced at Duan Jipeng. He wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he didn't say anything. Duan Jipeng understood Zhuowen's intention. He stretched out his right hand. In the center of his palm, there was a complicated pattern that looked like a black eye that was looking at Zhuowen. This is the dark chakra eye, the astral soldier that Yun Fei gave to me. It has all kinds of mysterious powers. Perhaps you are wondering why I didn't use the astral soldier when I was fighting with Venerable Hongrui, Duan Jipeng said self-deprecatingly. Yes, you said it yourself. The astral soldier is very powerful. If you had used the astral soldier, you would have easily defeated Venerable Hongrui. Zhuowen said calmly. The astral soldier is indeed very powerful. However, the price to use it is also very high. It requires a huge amount of blood sacrifice to activate the astral soldier. It requires the blood sacrifice of millions of living beings. Only after feeding the astral soldier will the astral soldier be able to unleash its power. I really can't do something like blood sacrifice, and I don't want to do it either. The only way I can activate the astral soldier is by sacrificing my blood essence. However, the consequence of doing so is that not only is the astral soldier's power ordinary, but I will also die because of the blood sacrifice. I will only use this move when my life is in danger. When Duan Jipeng said this, the corners of his mouth were full of bitterness. Zhuowen sucked in a breath of cold air. This astral weapon was so strange that it actually required a blood sacrifice to activate it. Moreover, it required such a large amount. Taoist Duan, according to what you said, won't the experts in the 100 domains who have obtained the astral soldier kill the weak wantonly and sacrifice their blood to the astral soldier? Zhuowen said with a frown. Duan Jipeng nodded and said, Indeed, such things happen. However, they are very rare. When those experts perform a blood sacrifice, they usually start a war between realms. There are 108 realms in the 100 outer realms. Every time there is a realm war, there will be hundreds of millions of lives lost. Those powerhouses usually use the lives of the dead to achieve their goal of blood sacrifice. Hearing this, Zhuowen frowned slightly. It seemed that the 100 domains in the 100 domains were even more dangerous than the lower realm. The killings there were even more terrifying and cruel. In order to nurture a divine weapon, they could start a war between domains where millions of living beings would die. After Zhuowen and Duan Jipeng talked about the astral soldier, they couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Chapter 3680. After a round of conversation, Zhuowen benefited greatly. The doubts he had about cultivation in the past were all resolved. Moreover, Zhuowen's future cultivation direction became clearer. Apart from that, Zhuowen also learned about the specific divisions of the heaven-breaking tier from Duan Jipeng. The heaven-breaking 9 transformations were the divine fetus transformation, spirit transformation, heaven trampling transformation, void god transformation, five elements transformation, yin-yang transformation, god realm transformation, celestial demon transformation, and ancient star transformation. Among them, the divine fetus transformation was a transformation of the physical body. It would become extremely tough and strong, and could adapt to the harsh environment of the chaotic galaxy. This was also why only heaven-breaking tier cultivators were qualified to enter the chaotic galaxy. Cultivators below the heaven-breaking tier would die without a doubt. However, Stuan was a freak. After all, he had cultivated the shattered divine power in advance, and his physical body was also tempered by the shattered divine power. It was not inferior to the physical body of a divine fetus transformation cultivator. That was why Zhuowen was able to come and go freely in the chaotic starry sky without being affected. It was said that the spirit transformation was a transformation of the divine sense, and the heaven trampling transformation allowed one to step on the sky in the 100 Domains outer realm. Zhuowen learned from Duan Jipeng that the energy level of the 100 Domains outer realm was much higher than that of the lower realm. Therefore, all matter and even gravity were extremely strong. It was far from what the lower realm could compare to. Cultivators before the heaven trampling transformation couldn't fly at all. They could only run on the ground like mortals. Duan Jipeng's God realm transformation would condense his own God realm. Regardless of whether it was attacking or defending, God realm was extremely convenient and powerful. After the God realm transformation, the main characteristic of the celestial demon transformation was that one could transform into a celestial demon body. One's strength would increase by hundreds or thousands, and it was extremely explosive. Supremacy Hong Rei was a celestial demon transformation cultivator. The celestial demon he transformed into was extremely difficult and powerful to deal with. If Zhuowen hadn't used the right strategy, he and Duan Jipeng would have died. After Duan Jipeng recovered slightly, he slowly stood up and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Zhuo, I'll never forget your life-saving grace. I don't have anything good on me. Take this halberd." Zhuowen took the halberd. His eyes instantly became serious. He could feel the terrifying aura contained within the halberd. The halberd's aura even surpassed the snake shadow divine staff that he had just obtained. Without a doubt, this halberd was a divine artifact that surpassed Heaven Breaker rank 3. This is the Moon Shaman weighted halberd. It's a level 4 heaven-crushing divine weapon. I hope you don't mind, Duan Jipeng said with a smile. Meanwhile, Duan was seeing stars. Duan Jipeng was really worthy of being an elite at the God Domain Transformation realm. He had casually gifted him a level 4 heaven-crushing God tool. This was really a valuable gift. Although Zhuowen wanted to decline, he couldn't resist Duan Jipeng's enthusiasm and could only accept it in the end. After Duan Jipeng saw that Zhuowen had accepted the Moon Shaman weighted halberd, he asked solemnly, "Taoist Zhuo, did you teleport Venerable Hong Rui to your lower realm starry sky and make use of the starry sky's law to kill him?" Zhuowen was stunned for a moment before he nodded. "Then you're in trouble," Duan Jipeng said seriously. "What do you mean?" Zhuowen asked solemnly. Venerable Hong Rui was a venerable of the Nuwa clan. He was considered one of the higher-ups in the Nuwa clan. Such a person would definitely leave a trace of his aura in the clan's ancestral hall. As long as Venerable Hong Rui dies, the Nuwa clan's Grand Venerable will be able to use that trace of his aura to search for the place where Venerable Hong Rui died. Venerable Hong Rui died in your starry sky. If the Nuwa clan's Grand Venerable finds out, I don't think I need to tell you what will happen to your starry sky. Duan Jipeng sighed softly. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. He didn't expect the Nuwa clan's Grand Venerable to have such a trick up his sleeve. Venerable Hong Rui died in the starry sky. If the Grand Venerable really came to find him, he would definitely find the starry sky. When that time came, it would be really troublesome. No matter how strong the Grand Venerable is, he shouldn't be able to resist the suppression of the starry sky's law, right? As long as the living beings in the starry sky don't come out, the Grand Venerable won't be able to do anything to us, Zhuowen said solemnly. Duan Jipeng shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Fellow Taoist Zhuo, your thinking is too simple. The Grand Venerable is an existence that surpasses the heaven-crushing realm. With his strength, he can destroy any starry sky in the starry sky. However, the price to pay for destroying a starry sky in the starry sky is extremely high. Existences like him rarely do such things. However, if he really finds out that Venerable Hong Rui died in your starry sky, the Grand Venerable will really destroy the starry sky. Juan was stunned. His expression became extremely ugly. According to Duan Jipeng, wouldn't the Nuwa clan be doomed? Fellow Taoist Duan, is there no other way to conceal Venerable Hong Rui's aura? Zhuan asked anxiously. Duan Jipeng's eyes flashed. He gritted his teeth and said, I do have a way. The dark chakra I hidden in my body can conceal Venerable Hong Rui's aura. However, a blood sacrifice is required to activate the dark chakra. If I use my own blood sacrifice, I'll die for sure. Unless someone shares the sacrifice with me, I'll be able to avoid death, but my vitality will be greatly damaged. Zhuan agreed without any hesitation. He expressed his willingness to share the blood sacrifice with Duan Jipeng. After the two of them reached an agreement, Duan Jipeng extended his right hand. The symbol on his palm started to squirm and wriggle. In the end, it left his palm and hovered in front of him. This was the image of an eye formed by complex veined patterns. However, this image was incomplete. Zhuan could sense a very strange and unusual aura from this eye. This aura was something he had never experienced before. He knew that this was the power of a star weapon. Duan Jipeng bit his thumb and aimed the wound at the dark chakra eye. The dark chakra eye pounced toward Duan Jipeng like a cat that had smelled blood. It started to furiously absorb Duan Jipeng's blood essence. Soon, Duan Jipeng's face became extremely pale, and his body started to tremble. When Duan Jipeng was about to reach his limit, he quickly sealed the dark chakra eye and stopped the bleeding. Fellow Taoist Zhua, all you have to do is follow my instructions. Remember, if you can't hold on, you must tell me. I'll stop the dark chakra eye in time. Duan Jipeng solemnly warned. Zhuan nodded. He also cut his thumb and aimed the wound at the dark chakra eye. Duan Jipeng also released the seal on the dark chakra eye. The dark chakra eye once again pounced on Zhuan. Zhuan could feel that his blood essence was quickly being sucked away by the dark chakra eye. Soon, Zhuan felt dizzy. His face was pale. This is a sign of excessive blood loss. But the dark chakra eye didn't stop. Instead, the speed of absorption became even faster. It's as if it wants to suck Zhuan dry. Duan Jipeng found that Zhuan couldn't hold on any longer. He quickly sealed the dark chakra eye again. Plop. Zhuan's legs were weak, and he almost fell to the ground. He gasped for breath. His eyes were full of fear. Is this enough? Zhuan looked at Duan Jipeng. It should be enough. But with the current power of the dark chakra eye, it won't be able to cover the aura of Venerable Hong Rui, who has already entered the Fiend God transformation state for a long time. I think it can cover for about 10,000 years at most. Chapter 3681. Zhuan's expression was somewhat gloomy. There were more than 100 billion living beings roaming the universe. It was truly too many. Unless he invaded other galaxies like Golden Corner Starry Sky and took over other galaxies, he might be able to properly arrange all the living beings in the universe. But he obviously wouldn't do something like invading another's territory for no reason. And the space of his great world was limited. It simply couldn't accommodate all the living beings in the universe. Fellow Taoist Duan, what's the specific cultivation level of that Nuwa clan's Grand Sovereign? Zhuan asked with a gloomy face. Duan Jipeng was startled, but he didn't think too much about it. He said, I don't know about the Grand Sovereign's specific cultivation level. In any case, it's beyond heaven crushing. The realm above heaven crushing is the great carefree realm. At this realm, one can be free and unfettered. They can freely roam the chaotic universe, and their strength is even more terrifying. Such existences are the pinnacle of powerhouses in the 100 domains. They're supreme existences that can dominate a region and all living beings. At this point, Duan Jipeng's eyes revealed yearning and reverence. Good. If I can reach the great carefree realm within 10,000 years, even if that grand sovereign really finds out about the universe, he probably won't dare to go too far. Zhuan said. Duan Jipeng nodded and said, powerhouses of the great carefree realm are all peerless figures. Under normal circumstances, they won't casually get into conflict. If you really reach the great carefree realm, the grand sovereign won't act recklessly. What? What did you say? You want to reach the great carefree realm in 10,000 years? Duan Jipeng thought of something and suddenly turned his head to look at Zhuan in shock. He repeated his question. I said if I reach the great carefree realm in 10,000 years, then I'll be able to protect the universe. Zhuan said seriously. Duan Jipeng face-bombed and said somewhat speechlessly, fellow Taoist Zhua, I think you'd better give up on this idea. It's basically impossible to reach the great carefree realm in 10,000 years without breaking the heavens. In the 100 domains, 10,000 years is as short as a snap of a finger. You're already a genius if you can reach the heaven-crushing fifth transformation in such a short time, but to reach the great carefree realm, then, at this point, Duan Jipeng shook his head. His meaning was very clear. He felt that Zhuan was just talking nonsense. Zhuan smiled but didn't say anything. In fact, only he himself knew that after his soul merged with the primordial stone, his comprehension ability was absolutely unimaginably powerful. One had to know that he had cultivated from the first to the fifth blight in less than 50 years. If he were to enter the 100 domains, he would be able to sense even more powerful energies and laws. In that case, his cultivation speed would only be faster than roaming the starry skies. He was confident in himself. Of course, if he couldn't reach the great carefree realm in 10,000 years, he would try his best to bring the creatures roaming the starry sky into the big world. Fellow Taoist Duan, do you have any treasures that can suppress your cultivation base? If you do, then come with me to travel the starry sky as a guest. Let me do my part as a host, Zhuowen said with a smile. Duan Jipeng shook his head and said apologetically, fellow Taoist Zhua, I'm sorry. I don't have any treasures that can suppress my cultivation base, and my cultivation base is too high. It's even more difficult to suppress my cultivation base, so I won't be going as a guest. With fellow Taoist Zhua's aptitude, you should be able to come to the 100 domains soon. If fate allows it, let's meet in the 100 domains. With that, Duan Jipeng took out a divine ship from his spirit ring and jumped onto the deck. He waved at Zhuan and drove the divine ship away. Zhuan silently watched Duan Jipeng's figure disappear completely before returning to the starry sky. His face was extremely pale, and his aura was extremely weak. The dark chakra eye had absorbed almost 60% of his essence blood, which made his body feel like it was emptied. He was extremely weak. He had to go back and recuperate for a while. Yuan cultivated in the Ryuka Valley for 10 years before barely recovering. During these 10 years, Yuan basically stayed in the Ryuka Valley with his family. Occasionally, he would guide Zhuojunan's cultivation. At the same time, Yuan had gathered many top craftsmen in the starry sky. He wanted to gather these craftsmen to melt down all the heaven-breaking divine artifacts he had on him and reforge them into a divine spear. He knew that the 100 domains were full of danger. He had several heaven-breaking divine artifacts on him. Other than taking out one to suppress the Ryuka Valley, the rest were not very useful to him. So, he planned to melt down all the divine artifacts and reforge them into a divine spear. It had to be said that the heaven-breaking divine artifacts were indeed too strong. Yuan used the green lotus fire of his divine soul sword intent to burn them for 10 years before he could barely melt them down. After the divine artifacts were melted down, the next step was for him to gather the divine craftsmen to forge the shape of the divine spear. In the courtyard of the Nether Realm, a tall young man who looked somewhat similar to Zhuan was practicing a fist technique. The wind from his fists whistled like dragons and tigers, and its power was unparalleled. Not far away from the young man, Zhuowen and Mu Chenxue stood side by side, silently watching the young man practice his fist technique. After a set of fist techniques, the young man hurriedly came in front of Zhuowen and Mu Chenxue and asked hopefully, "Father, how is my cultivation of the Heaven Path fist technique?" This young man was in his early 20s, and there was still a hint of childishness on his face. This young man was Zhuan and Mu Qinshue's son, Zhuojun. In the past 10 years, Zhuojun's cultivation speed was extremely fast. 10 years ago, he was only at the peak of the true immortal realm. But now, he had cultivated to the void sky 8 steps. This kind of cultivation speed made even Zhuowen blush with shame. Very good. You've already cultivated the Heaven Path Fist technique to greater mastery. If you use the Heaven Path Fist technique, even the Life Enlightenment Realm cultivators in the Void Sky 9 steps might not be your match. Zhuowen said with satisfaction. Hearing this, Zhuojun beamed with joy. Mu Qinshu also couldn't help but smile. Suddenly, a servant came in from outside the courtyard. Lord Zhua, there's news from the Divine Cauldron that the forging of the spear has been completed. Now, all that's left is for you to use the Divine Fire to complete the final step. The servant said respectfully. Zhuowen's eyes shone brightly. The Divine Cauldron was the place where the divine blacksmiths were forging the spear. Father, I also want to go and take a look. Zhuojun's eyes lit up as he spoke. Alright, come with me. But after entering the Divine Cauldron, don't do anything. Just watch from the side. Zhuowen instructed. Zhuojun hurriedly nodded in agreement. Thus, Yuan brought Zhuojun and followed the servant out of the courtyard. The Divine Cauldron was actually a palace in the southernmost part of the valley. Beneath the palace was the hottest earth fire in the entire galaxy. In the past, Yuan had borrowed the power of the earth fire and combined it with the green lotus fire to melt the Heavenbreaker grade divine artifacts. Especially the Moon Shaman weighted halberd that Duan Jipeng had given him. Because it was a Heavenbreaker grade 4 divine artifact, it had taken him a lot of effort to melt it. When Zhuan entered the Divine Cauldron, the servant guarding it bowed to Zhuan. Zhuan came to the center of the Divine Cauldron. There was a huge crack there. Below the crack, there was an endless amount of red magma. Above the magma, terrifying earth fire was constantly erupting. Above the earth fire, a coarse-looking spear embryo was quietly floating in the air. Chapter 3682. When Zhuojun reached the entrance, his face was flushed red and his body was drenched in sweat. He did not take another step forward. The temperature inside the furnace was too high. Zhuojun's cultivation was the lowest here, so he could not withstand the high temperature. Zhuan placed his right hand on Zhuojun's shoulder, and a cool energy flowed from his palm into Zhuojun's body. Zhuojun, who was still burning from the high temperature, immediately returned to normal. Jun, you stay here for now. The earth fire here is too strong. With your cultivation, you can't withstand it. Zhuowen said in a low voice. Zhuojun nodded obediently, but his eyes were filled with admiration when he looked at Zhuan. Master Zhua. Around the crack in the center of the palace, there were dozens of old men in long robes. These were the strongest blacksmiths that Zhuowen had invited. They were the strongest blacksmiths in the universe. For the past 10 years, these blacksmiths had worked tirelessly to refine the spear for him. An old man in his 70s slowly walked forward. He cupped his hands and smiled bitterly. Master Zhua, the spear embryo has been refined. There's only one step left. We still need the help of Master's divine fire. No problem. Zhuan waved his hand and pointed his sword finger at his forehead. Immediately, a soul sword intent was released. Around the soul sword intent, a terrifying green lotus flame burst out, burning continuously. From afar, the green color was glaring and intense. The soul sword intent rushed into the space above the crack and quickly circled around the spear embryo. Then, the green lotus flame was like a maggot, completely igniting the spear embryo. At the same time, Yuan formed a seal with his hands, and the array below the crack was activated. Then, the sea of lava in the crack surged with terrifying waves. Finally, it condensed into a fire dragon that rushed out of the crack and into the spear embryo. The green lotus flame and the fire dragon merged together, forming an even more terrifying flame that continued to roast the spear embryo. The surface of the spear embryo began to turn red, a sign that it was being melted by the high temperature. You can start forging the spear embryo. Zhuowen said to the surrounding refiners. The craftsmen around the crack nodded. Immediately, they took out their divine hammers and controlled them with their divine thoughts. Then, they began to hit the spear embryo continuously. The sound of metal clashing resounded in the surroundings, crisp and pleasing to the ear. As the divine hammer continued to fall, the impurities on the surface of the spear embryo gradually fell off, revealing the original appearance of the divine spear. Time gradually passed, and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. When the divine hammer knocked out the last piece of impurities, the divine spear exploded with a blazing light. At the same time, Yun saw a crescent moon burning with red flames above the divine spear. This crescent moon was as bright as the moon, but also as hot as the sun. An unprecedentedly terrifying aura burst out in an instant. Then, the ground began to crack, and dense cracks appeared on the surrounding palaces. The aura of the divine spear was too terrifying. Even the palace could not withstand it. Zhuan took a step forward, and his body was surrounded by purple intent. He ignored the terrifying flames around the divine spear and grabbed the handle of the divine spear in his hand. Sizzle! The terrifyingly high temperature caused black smoke to rise from Zhuowen's palm, which was holding the spear. Zhuan grimaced in pain, but he was indifferent. He still held the divine spear firmly in his hand. "All of you, leave this place!" Zhuan shouted. Everyone in the palace hurriedly ran out of the palace. Zhuojun and looked at Zhuowen's miserable appearance and could not help but shout Zhuowen's name. "Jun, then, leave this place quickly. I will take care of this. Don't worry." Yun gave Zhuojun a reassuring look and urged the latter to leave quickly. Zhuojun hesitated for a moment, but finally left the palace. He also knew that he was too weak. If he went over, he would only be a hindrance. Ka. The divine spear exploded with an even more terrifying aura. The entire palace was distorted, and cracks appeared below. The magma was annihilated. Zhuowen's eyes were burning. He held the handle of the divine spear tightly and released his spiritual sword intent. He was trying to subdue the weapon spirit of the divine spear. He could see that the weapon spirit of the divine spear had just been born. It was at its weakest. If he did not completely tame it now, he would not have another chance in the future. Zhuojun and the others had not been in the palace for long when they were shocked to find that the palace had collapsed and shattered into countless pieces. Zhuowen and the divine spear rushed into the sky and engaged in a fierce battle. Zhuojun saw that Zhuowen's injuries were increasing, and he could not help but worry. Zhuowen and the divine spear fought for a full day and night. Finally, he found an opportunity. He used his spiritual sword intent to severely injure the weapon spirit. Then, he grabbed the handle of the divine spear and dripped his blood essence onto it. After dripping his blood, Zhuowen could clearly feel that he had formed a secret connection with the divine spear. The weapon spirit of the divine spear had been severely injured and could not resist. Just like that, it dripped his blood on it. At this moment, Zhuowen's body was dripping with blood. The corners of his mouth were full of blood. In order to subdue the weapon spirit of the divine spear, he had paid a considerable price. Fortunately, this weapon spirit had not matured yet. It could only unleash a small portion of the divine spear's power. Otherwise, one really could not subdue the divine spear. He might even be destroyed. This divine spear is even stronger than the moon shaman weighted halberd. It has probably reached the level of heaven-breaking tier 4. Zhuowen felt the terrifying aura coming from the divine spear. He discovered that on the blade of the divine spear, there was an image of a crescent moon. And what was strange about this crescent moon was that its surface was actually burning with raging flames. This image was exactly the same as the crescent moon that appeared in the sky when the divine spear was just born. Zhuowen held the handle of the divine spear with his right hand and suddenly waved it in the air. Instantly, a terrifying power spread out. With Zhuowen as the center, the surrounding tens of billions of miles of space gradually distorted. Zhuowen was frightened and hurriedly put away the divine spear. Only then did the distorted space return to normal. He just waved it casually and this space almost could not withstand it. It was indeed worthy of being the earth god's spear that had fused with several divine tools. Since there is a crescent moon image burning with flames on the spear blade, then let's call it the half-moon god fire spear. Zhuan muttered to himself and gave this newly born divine spear a rather appropriate name. When Zhuan landed on the ground, those dozens of weapon refiners hurriedly went forward and congratulated Zhuan for obtaining a divine tool. Zhuan was rather happy and let them all go and receive their rewards. Those dozens of weapon refiners were even more beaming with joy. One had to know that Zhuan invited them over and gave them an extremely attractive reward. Now that the divine spear had been refined, they could not wait to receive their rewards. They were just waiting for Zhuan's words. "Father, you are so powerful. Such a powerful divine spear was subdued by you." Zhujunan went forward and looked at Zhuan with admiration. "Junan, help me back first." Chapter 3683. After half a year of recuperation, Zhuan finally recovered from all his internal injuries. He also planned to leave the open starry sky and head to the 100 domains. Outside the Hongmeng Path, Ryuka and a group of people came to send Zhuan off. In addition, the Black King, Demon Sage Donghuang Tai, Du Huaken and some other familiar people from Sanqing Street also came outside the Hongmeng Path. They were all here to send Zhuan off. Of course, only these people knew about Zhuo Wenli's plan to travel the starry sky. They were all his trusted friends. We don't know what kind of place the 100 domains is, but it's much more dangerous than traveling the starry sky. If you get there, you must remember to protect yourself. Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao pulled Zhuan and nagged at him. Both of their faces were filled with reluctance. Although they wanted Zhuan to stay, they knew that it was unrealistic. Zhuan had his own pursuits and path. They couldn't force him. "Father, I will definitely catch up to you. After I break through the heavens, I will step onto the Hongmeng Path to find you." Zhuojun gave Zhuan a hug and said with a firm gaze. Zhuan patted Zhuojun and shoulder and said with a smile, "Jun, then I believe that with your talent, you will soon catch up to me." Zhuan's gaze fell on Mu Chenxue. He didn't say anything but revealed an apologetic expression. Although his great world could fit Mu Chenxue, Zhuojun, and the rest of his family and bring them to the 100 domains. But he knew that this wasn't suitable at all. The laws of the 100 domains were too strong. No one in his family had broken through the heavens. Even if he brought them there, they would just stay in the great world. If he died in the 100 domains, the great world would be destroyed. At that time, his family would also be destroyed. This was simply not worth the loss. Zhuowen's current plan was to raise his cultivation as soon as possible and then establish a foundation of his own in the 100 domains. In the future, if any Ryuka or native cultivators managed to break through the heavens and enter the 100 domains, then he would accept them as a member of his force. This was the most appropriate method at the moment. Mu Chenxue stretched out her slender, jade-like hands and carefully tidied up Zhuowen's clothes. She instructed, "After reaching the 100 outer territories, you must be careful. Don't act recklessly. There's one more important thing that you must do. That is to think of me often. Do you understand?" Zhuowen's gaze was gentle as he held onto Mu Chenxue's hand and said affectionately, "My wife's words are like an imperial edict, and I dare not disobey." Mu Chenxue giggled. After that, the Black King, Donghuang Tai, and the others also went up to bid farewell to Zhuan. After exchanging some pleasantries, Zhuan stepped onto the primordial path, waved at everyone, and rushed towards the primordial path. Not long after, Zhuowen's figure turned into a Xiaohei and disappeared from everyone's sight. "Uncle Demon Saint, my father said that only heaven-breaking realm cultivators have the qualifications to step onto the primordial path. If someone who hasn't broken through the heavens steps on it, they will be pressed down. Is this true?" Zhuojun looked at Zhuowen's disappearing figure with great reluctance in his heart, but his gaze quickly landed on the primordial path and he asked Demon Saint curiously, "This is true. When I went up, I almost died there. If it wasn't for Master Zhuo saving me, I would have already died." Demon Saint revealed a bitter smile. Thinking back to the scene when he stepped onto the primordial path, he still had some lingering fear. Then my father's cultivation is only at the fifth heaven's blight. Why can he come and go freely on the primordial path? Why don't Uncle Demon Saint go up and give it a try? Who knows, you might be the same as my father. Jujunin said. Demon Saint shook his head like a rattledrum. What a joke, Yuan wasn't here this time. If he died there, no one could save him. Your father is a freak, not what we can compare to. He can come and go freely on the primordial path, but we can't. Demon Saint admitted defeat. Everyone also nodded their heads in deep agreement, very much agreeing with Demon Saint's evaluation of Zhu. This guy was indeed a freak. Yuan rushed on the primordial path for a full few days. He soon discovered that the circling starry sky he was in had already become the size of a palm at this moment. At the same time, he also finally saw the full appearance of the primordial tree clearly. The primordial tree was an incomparably massive towering tree that grew in the chaotic starry sky. The entire primordial tree was suffused with a mysterious purple color. And on this big tree, there were no leaves, only densely packed branches like a spider web. And on these branches hung one starry sky-colored fruit after another. Yuan knew that these fruits were actually each and every one of the lower realm's starry skies. And the circling starry sky that Yuan was in was one of these fruits. Apart from this, Yuan also discovered that among these starry sky fruits, there were quite a few purple long rainbows that gave rise to one after another. He was very clear that these purple long rainbows were actually the primordial path of each lower realm's starry sky. The place where these purple long rainbows finally converged was extremely far ahead, on a seemingly very large continent. That continent's surface was enshrouded with all sorts of different energies. These energies were brightly colored, dazzling and resplendent. Yuan knew that that continent was actually his final destination this time, the 100 Outer Realms. He knew that the 100 Outer Realms looked like it was not far from him, but actually, it was much further than he imagined. Bang bang bang. Suddenly, the sound of intense collision came from the place where Yuan was. His gaze landed on the place of collision and discovered that a single-eyed behemoth had appeared there since who knows when. This behemoth was at least 10,000 feet in size and exuded a terrifying aura that made one's hair stand on end. In particular, that single eye contained some sort of purplish gold color, and the energy contained within it was absolutely extraordinary. This single-eyed behemoth stared fixedly at Yuan. Yuan even saw that the single-eyed behemoth was actually drooling at him. Was it treating him as prey? Bang bang bang. The single-eyed behemoth continuously bombarded the primordial path, blasting out a series of dense energy ripples on the surface of the primordial path. There was some sort of powerful energy barrier several dozen feet around the primordial path. This energy barrier was formed by the energy of the primordial tree, and it could be said that it was the purest energy of the primordial tree. When Yuan first set foot on the primordial path, he had already discovered the energy barrier surrounding the primordial path. At first, he had thought that this energy barrier was superfluous, but now he knew that this energy barrier was really useful. The aura of this single-eyed behemoth that had suddenly appeared was very powerful, and it was at least a powerful being around the heaven-crushing third transformation. If this energy barrier had not resisted this single-eyed behemoth, Yuan would have been able to deal with it, but he would probably have been in a somewhat difficult situation. However, Yuan's expression quickly turned ugly. This was because the sounds of collisions around him had become even more violent. He looked up and discovered that even more single-eyed behemoths had appeared around him at some point. Chapter 3684. If Yuan were to face so many one-eyed behemoths alone, he would probably really be finished. Fortunately, the primordial chaos path's energy barrier was really sturdy. The continuous bombardment of hundreds of one-eyed beasts did not have any effect on the energy barrier. Yuan looked at the one-eyed beasts around him and fell into deep thought. It seemed that the chaotic starry sky was much more dangerous than he had imagined. He had only traveled along the primordial chaos path for a few days when he encountered these troublesome one-eyed beasts. Perhaps there were even more terrifying existences in the depths of the chaotic starry sky. Zhuan pondered as he continued to rush toward the depths of the primordial chaos path. In the following period of time, he saw all kinds of terrifying beasts in the chaotic starry sky. He even saw some beasts with auras that were not inferior to Supremacy Hongrui. He knew that these beasts were at least heaven-crushing 8 transformations. However, Zhuan's gaze became more and more solemn. He suddenly felt that his idea of relying on himself to reach the 100 domains was really too stupid. Unless he could reach the level of Duan Jipeng and Supremacy Hongrui, he might be able to reach the 100 domains from the primordial chaos tree without getting lost. However, with his current cultivation and strength, if he wanted to rely on traversing the starry sky to reach the 100 domains, it would probably be a fool's dream. He was also glad that the primordial chaos path appeared in the starry sky in advance. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. In the following period of time, Yuan basically buried himself in rushing. Occasionally, when he was tired, he would directly sit cross-legged on the primordial chaos path to meditate and cultivate. However, Zhuan discovered that he could not come into contact with the chaotic energy in the chaotic starry sky at all in the primordial chaos path. And without chaotic energy, he could not cultivate at all. He could only rely on chaotic crystals and divine medicine to recover. This made Zhuan very vexed. He knew that his plan to cultivate on the primordial chaos path was probably going to be ruined. After an unknown amount of time, Zhuan discovered that the 100 domains of the outer realms seemed to have begun to expand. Zhuan's eyes lit up. He knew that he should have already started to approach the 100 domains now. It probably wouldn't be long before he could reach the 100 outer realms. Another few months passed, and the vast territory of the 100 outer realms appeared before his eyes. The 100 outer realms were simply too large. They spanned across the primal chaos of the starry sky, like a giant primordial beast that could be seen but not touched. After Zhuan clearly saw the 100 outer realms, he felt his own insignificance. The 100 territories in the outer realm was simply too big. Even though it might not be as big as the primordial Hong tree, it was still 1/5 of the primordial Hong tree size. We're about to reach the 100 outer realms. Zhuan's eyes lit up and he sped up a lot. He was like the wind as he charged toward the 100 outer territories. Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying explosion resounded in the distance. The sound was so loud that when it reached Zhuan's ears, it echoed in Zhuan's ears. It was like a demonic sound that constantly ravaged his eardrums. It even affected his divine soul. Zhuan's expression changed slightly, and he couldn't help but look toward the source of the sound. He was shocked to see that in the distance, a monster that was hundreds of thousands of feet tall was constantly bombarding the primordial chaos paths that connected to the 100 outer realms. This monster's appearance was very similar to an octopus. It had countless black tentacles, but at the core of these tentacles was actually an incomparably huge minotaur. What terrified Zhuan even more was that this monster's tentacles were casually bombarding the nearby primordial chaos paths. They couldn't even withstand a single blow and were blasted into smithereens. How is this possible? Zhuan's pupils shrank to the size of needles. Along the way, Yuan had encountered too many giant beasts outside the primordial chaos paths. There were even heaven-crushing 8 transformations beasts. However, these giant beasts couldn't penetrate the primordial chaos path's defenses at all. However, this terrifying giant beast that suddenly appeared easily destroyed the primordial chaos paths with a casual blow. Moreover, Zhuan also discovered that there were actually some cultivators passing through the primordial chaos paths that were being bombarded. Obviously, most of these cultivators had just broken through the heavens and were planning to use the primordial chaos paths to head to the 100 outer realms. Unfortunately, the primordial chaos paths were destroyed. They didn't even have the chance to escape before they were swept away by the tentacles. Then, they were thrown into the Minotaur's mouth and eaten directly. What shocked Zhuan even more was that the Minotaur was heading towards him. Along the way, the primordial chaos paths were destroyed, and none of the cultivators inside survived. Damn it! What kind of monster is this? Zhuan's expression changed drastically. Without thinking, he immediately used his movement technique and quickly fled towards the 100 outer realms. He had to enter the 100 outer realms before this Minotaur reached his primordial chaos path. Otherwise, his fate wouldn't be much better than the other cultivators on the primordial chaos path. In his opinion, this monster could easily destroy the primordial chaos paths. It was probably the existence of the great carefree realm that Duan Jipeng mentioned. In the eyes of this kind of existence, he was an ant-like existence. He didn't want to face this Minotaur head-on. The 100 outer realms is close at hand. I only need 10 breaths of time to reach the entrance. As Zhuan was running quickly, he discovered that a door had appeared at the end of the primordial chaos path. He knew that it should be the end of the primordial chaos path, and also one of the entrances to the 100 outer realms. Zhuan was wild with joy. His feet moved even faster. His hands held the chaos crystal and rapidly absorbed the chaos energy to replenish the rapidly depleted energy in his body. Just as Zhuan was about to reach the entrance, a tentacle instantly fell on the end of the primordial chaos path. Crack, crack, crack. The energy shield on the surface of the primordial chaos path was covered with dense cracks. In the end, it exploded with a loud bang. At this moment, Zhuan reacted extremely quickly. With a stomp of his right foot, his body immediately retreated backward. At the same time, he released dozens of soul sword essences. They flew across the sky and blasted the black tentacle that had appeared in front of him. Bang, bang, bang. The soul sword essences only managed to stop the black tentacle for less than a breath of time before they were shattered by the tentacle with a loud bang. Zhuowen, on the other hand, simply fled in another direction. His eyes revealed a look of unwillingness. He was clearly just a little bit away from escaping into the 100 outer realms, but he was still a step slower than the monster. The moment Zhuan fled, he saw with his own eyes that the primordial chaos path he was in was completely shattered. Then, the black tentacle caught up to Zhuowen at an extremely fast speed. Zhuan was helpless. He could only take out the half-moon divine fire spear and hold it in front of him, hoping to block the attack. The only thing that made him happy was that the monster didn't come here personally. It only sent a tentacle. Obviously, the monster saw that Zhuowen was about to escape into the 100 outer realms, so it immediately mobilized its tentacle to deal with Zhuowen first. Bang, bang, bang. The black tentacle instantly lashed out at Zhuowen dozens of times. Zhuowen groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. Because his body couldn't withstand the terrifying aura, it began to crack. As for the half-moon divine fire spear, it was much dimmer and no longer had its divine might. Chapter 3685. When this black tentacle was about to land on Zhuowen's body, it actually exploded. Black blood splattered and stained Zhuowen's entire body. This black blood was extremely corrosive. The instant Zhuowen came into contact with this black blood, Zhuowen could no longer bear it and screamed in agony. With Zhuowen's cultivation, normal corrosive properties could not harm him at all. However, this black tentacle monster was at a much higher level than him. Its corrosive properties were too terrifying. Not only did it corrode his physical body, but it was also constantly eating away at his divine sense. Zhuowen endured the intense pain and looked in the direction of the giant Minotaur monster. He saw that the giant monster was currently blocked by a figure. From afar, this figure looked like the figure of an ordinary middle-aged man. He held a divine sword that was about 10 feet long. Endless, terrifying sword intent surged from this person's body. His aura was not weaker than that of the giant monster. Most of the monster's tentacles had all exploded at this moment. This person had probably just appeared and attacked the monster with his sword. That was why most of the monster's tentacles were cut off. As for the tentacle that had attacked Zhuowen, it had suddenly exploded because it had been affected by this person's sword. The giant monster roared angrily and pounced toward that figure. Thus, one man and one beast engaged in a fierce battle in the chaotic starry sky. Terrifying ripples from the battle were like ring-shaped waves that constantly spread out in all directions. Zhuowen's consciousness became more and more blurry. His physical body was continuously corroded. Right now, he could barely withstand it. However, his divine sense was also affected. Although his divine sense was powerful, it was not to the extent of being annihilated by this corrosion. However, it had a great impact on his divine sense, causing his consciousness to begin to fall into chaos. At the same time, Yun discovered that not far away, some giant beasts had already discovered him and were approaching him. They were treating him as prey. I have to hurry and enter the 100 domains. Zhuan endured the splitting headache and forced himself to stay alert. He quickly rushed toward the entrance not far away. However, he was still too slow. A giant beast that looked like a leopard was extremely fast and blocked his path. This leopard's aura wasn't particularly powerful, and it was only around the heaven-crushing transformation stage. If Zhuan was at his peak, he would have killed him with a single strike. But now, his condition was too bad. His mind was starting to go haywire, and his strength had dropped considerably. Scram! Zhuan realized that more and more giant beasts had gathered behind him, and they were all eyeing him covetously, intending to ambush him. He knew that he could not delay any longer. Ignoring the extremely poor state of his spirit, he once again unleashed a spirit sword intent and slashed at the leopard. Bang bang bang! The terrifying green lotus explosion burst out, accompanied by the terrifying sword will, and the leopard was directly torn to pieces. Zhuan also spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face was pale. He braced himself and quickly rushed into the entrance of the 100 outer territories. The moment he entered the entrance, he could clearly feel the world spinning. He was very familiar with this feeling. It was the feeling of being teleported. It was just that his mental state was too exhausted, and his divine soul was also exhausted to the point of being in a deficit. He had already fainted during the process of transmission. In the tranquil valley, purple flowers bloomed everywhere. At the end of the valley, there was a small waterfall. 2 figures walked over from the entrance of the valley. These 2 figures were respectively one old and one young. The old man carried a bamboo basket and walked slowly. In front of the old man was a young girl in the prime of her youth. Grandpa, there really are purple god flowers in this valley, and there are so many of them. In the future, we don't have to wade through mountains and rivers to go to Violet Mountain. We can just come directly to this valley. The young girl skipped into the valley. When she saw the large expanse of purple flowers in the valley, her beautiful eyes revealed little stars, and she cheerfully walked into the sea of flowers. It's indeed a great harvest. I didn't expect that the valley I accidentally discovered would actually have so many purple god flowers growing. The old man was also full of smiles. Miaozhen, stop playing. Pick the purple god flowers first. However, don't pick too many. We can't drain the pond to catch all the fish. In the future, we still need to come here often to pick them. The old man said to the young girl. When he discovered that the young girl did not reply, he could not help but look in her direction in puzzlement. At this moment, the young girl was standing at the front of the valley, at the small waterfall. She was in a daze, and no one knew what she was looking at. The old man called out to the young girl a few more times, but he discovered that the young girl was indifferent. The old man was surprised. He could not help but stand up and walk to the young girl's side. He wanted to say something, but when he followed the young girl's line of sight, he could not help but be stunned. He saw that on the shore below the waterfall, there was a man lying down. What made the old man frown even more was that this man's condition was too miserable. This was because this man had been corroded from head to toe by some kind of corrosive energy. His flesh and blood were all purple and black in color. 1/3 of this man's flesh and blood had been completely corroded, revealing eerie white bones. His face was also a mess, and it was impossible to recognize his original appearance. Miaozhen, this man is already dead. The old man carefully observed the corpse that was beyond recognition. He pulled Miaozhen and did not plan to care about this man. The old man's thinking was very simple. It was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. This man's injuries were so serious, and he could see that there was still some residual corrosive energy in his wounds. Even he was shocked. He knew that this man was definitely not an ordinary person. In other words, the person who hunted him was definitely not an ordinary person. Grandpa, he is clearly still alive. Why do you say that he is dead? Miaozhen broke free from the old man's hand and said with a frown. I said that he is dead, so he is dead. Your grandpa has been a doctor for his whole life. How can I not see this? The old man stepped forward again and wanted to pull Miaozhen away, but Miaozhen dodged. Miaozhen hurriedly ran to the corpse. She did not mind that the corpse was dirty. She stretched out her jade-like hand and touched the man's neck. She said, "Grandpa, I was right. He still has a pulse. He is still alive. You must have seen wrongly just now." The old man sighed softly and pulled out a piercingly cold dagger from his waist. He said, "Since he is not dead, I will kill him now." Miaozhen screamed and quickly blocked in front of the old man. Her beautiful eyes were filled with fear. She said, "Grandpa, what are you doing? Why do you want to kill him?" The old man pointed at the surface of the corpse that was beyond recognition. He said, "There is residual corrosive energy in the wounds on this man's body. It is absolutely not something that can be left behind by an ordinary heaven-breaking tier elite. In other words, this man should have been hunted down by a very powerful elite and finally landed here with heavy injuries. The implications are really too great. We cannot bear the responsibility at all. If by any chance we save him and are then found by the faction behind this person, we will really be finished." Miaozhen was stunned. She did not expect that the old man would actually think so much. "Grandpa, didn't you always say that a doctor has a benevolent heart? You have been a doctor for your whole life. Haven't you always followed this principle? Why are you going against your own principle at this time?" Chapter 3686. The old man walked forward and lifted up the corpse that was beyond recognition. Then, he said to the young girl, "Let's place him in a hidden place in this valley first. I'll treat his wounds slowly later." "Grandpa, aren't we bringing him back?" the young girl asked in surprise. "Can't bring him back. This person's origin is unknown. We'd better be more cautious. If there's really a formidable person chasing after him, this way, he won't implicate us and we can save him," the old man said. Although the young girl was still worried, she had no choice but to accept the old man's suggestion. Very soon, the two people found a hidden cave in a remote part of the valley. They made a simple arrangement in the cave and placed this man who was beyond recognition here. After that, the old man took out bottles and jars from his body. Opening the bottle corks, he smeared the various liquids inside on the wounds on the man's body. What was strange was that after these medicinal liquids were smeared on the wounds that were deteriorating continuously stopped deteriorating. But the old man's expression became more and more solemn. These healing medicines of his were the most famous in this area. It was also his ancestral secret recipe. No matter how serious the external injuries were, as long as this healing medicine was smeared, it could basically recover rapidly. But this person's wounds merely stopped deteriorating. There was no trace of recovery at all. It could be seen that this person's external injuries were absolutely not ordinary. "Grandpa, did your medicine lose its effectiveness? Why is it not working at all?" The young girl opened her eyes wide and looked for a long time but did not see that the man's wounds improved. She asked in surprise. The old man staggered and almost fell. "What do you mean my medicine lost its effectiveness? It's clearly this person's injuries that are not ordinary." "Miaozhen, this person's injuries are too serious. Furthermore, it's not an ordinary person's injuries. To want to completely recover his injuries, I'm afraid it will take a lot of time. Let's go back first today. Tomorrow I'll bring some more medicine to apply on him," the old man said. Miaozhen nodded. She also knew that her grandfather used the best medicine on this person and it only stopped his injuries from deteriorating. It could be seen that to want to completely recover this person's injuries, it would probably take a very long time. "Grandpa, wait a moment. I'll set up my array disc at the cave entrance. This way, it can also protect his life." Miaozhen took out an array disc from her bosom and set it at the cave entrance. Suddenly, a strong array formation fluctuation appeared at the cave entrance. The old man felt that it was not worth it to waste an array disc on this person. However, looking at Miaozhen's expression, he did not say anything. His granddaughter was too kind-hearted. How could she survive in this cold world where only the strong were respected with such a personality? The old man began to worry. In the future, if he was really gone, who would Miao Jin rely on? Her personality was really not suitable for this world. Fortunately, Miao Jin's Dao root isn't bad. Once the matters here are over, I can send her to the Ascension sect to cultivate. As long as she performs well, she should be able to survive in this cruel world in the future with the Ascension sect as her backing. The old man was filled with thoughts. Grandpa, I'm done, let's go. After Miao Jin finished setting up the array, she clapped her hands and called out to the old man. After that, the old man and the young man left the valley. Night slowly descended, and the entire valley was plunged into darkness. Inside the cave, the man whose face was completely unrecognizable slowly opened his eyes. I didn't die. The young man's eyes were filled with joy. He wanted to get up, but he soon discovered that his entire body was in a tearing pain. This young man was actually Zhuowen. When the black tentacle exploded, the blood that splashed out was so corrosive that it almost corroded Zhuowen's flesh beyond recognition. Especially when Zhuowen saw the terrifying injuries on his body, he couldn't help but gasp. I smell medicine on my body. Did someone apply some kind of healing medicine on me? Zhuowen soon discovered that the wounds on his body had a strong smell of medicine. And it was this medicine that was preventing the continuous corrosion of his wounds from worsening. It seemed that someone had saved him. As for the injuries to his spirit, Zhuowen wasn't worried. His spirit was really too miraculous. After being corroded to a certain extent by that power, it actually directly swallowed that power. And after swallowing that power, Zhuowen discovered that his spirit had grown a little stronger. Now, he was mainly worried about the injuries on his body. Zhuowen smiled bitterly. He finally knew how terrifying a great carefree realm powerhouse was. Just their blood alone, he couldn't bear it. The gap was really too great. And he also finally understood how dangerous the chaotic starry skies were. There were actually so many terrifying giant beasts. No wonder it was extremely dangerous for heaven-breaking realm powerhouses to cross the chaotic starry skies. If they were unlucky and encountered a great carefree realm giant beast, they would really be finished. Zhuowen guessed that when Venerable Hong Rui and Duan Jipeng crossed from the 100 domains outside the realm to the primordial Hong Meng tree, they should have grasped some kind of method to avoid giant beasts, so they could safely reach the primordial Hong Meng tree. I have to recover from my injuries as soon as possible. Zhuowen's gaze was solemn. Previously, he had been in a coma, so he couldn't take the initiative to heal his injuries. But now, he was awake, so he naturally had to recover his injuries as much as possible. Thus, Zhuowen opened the great world and took out many healing divine pills as well as heaven-breaking divine medicines that he had obtained while wandering the starry skies. Although heaven-breaking divine medicines were very precious, how could they be compared to his life? His injuries were too serious now, and he didn't have the strength to protect himself at all. Now, the most important task was to recover from his injuries. Zhuowen's recovery ability was indeed stronger than ordinary cultivators, and he also found that this world was filled with terrifying rich energy. This was chaotic energy purer than the chaotic starry skies, and it was a high-level energy that could be directly absorbed into the body. With the help of this energy, divine pills, and divine medicines, Zhuowen's injuries were rapidly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Zhuowen suspected that if he wasn't injured, relying on the energy here, he would probably be able to cultivate to the peak of the 5th blight overnight. Woo-woo. Just as Zhuowen was healing, a strange sound came from outside the cave. It was sometimes far and sometimes close, like the wail of a malicious spirit in the night. This sound attracted Zhuowen's attention, and he looked outside the cave. What shocked Zhuowen was that it was pitch black outside. With his eyesight, he couldn't see what was outside. It was completely dark. In the cave, the only light came from the disc array that was placed not far from him. The range of the light source of the disc array wasn't large, and it just happened to cover Zhuowen's body in the light source. However, when Zhuowen used his divine sense to investigate the area, his heart sank. His divine sense had only stopped at the area of light. As for the surrounding darkness, his divine sense was completely repelled. It was as if there was a huge force in the darkness that prevented his divine sense from exploring. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.